Hello and Merry Christmas. Thank you for being part of Never a Truer Word in 2025. 2025 has been the biggest year for Never a Truer Word, and things are changing next year. Things will be different, so I'm looking forward to those as well. Now, this is a compilation of everything I've ever done on what I think is probably the most interesting unsolved cold case in true crime, the murder of JonBenet Ramsey, a crime that happened around Christmas time as well. So this is a full statement investigation, a compilation of everything I've ever looked at around this case over the years. And what I really find interesting about this case and what helps me with it is so many people spoke. So we have the 911 call, we'll look at that. We've got the ransom note, we'll look at that as well. And then John and Patsy have given many interviews. We are going to look at one from very close to the time that JonBenet was murdered through to just last year when John Ramsey spoke himself. And you'll be able to see as well, maybe my position changes as I go deeper and deeper and deeper through the analysis. Anyway, I hope you enjoy. Do let me know in the comments or get in touch on social media if you've any observations or thoughts on what is in this full statement investigation of the JonBenet Ramsey case. Hello and welcome to Never a Truer Word, where we look at the words that people choose to use to see if they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and give you some more confidence in understanding what people are really saying all around you when they talk to you, when they email you, when they text you, when you see an update on social media. That's what this channel is all about. In this episode, we are going to look at Patsy Ramsey's 911 call, the call she made to say that her daughter was missing and she thought she had been kidnapped. And we're going to look at a 911 call, so we're going to look at things you want to see in general inside a genuine 911 call. A 911 call when the person is calling, they have no guilty knowledge, they haven't been involved in what they're reporting, they aren't trying to lie to the 911 operator. And we want to see in those calls a sense of urgency. You call 911 when you need help and you need help fast. So we want to see sense of urgency. We want to see clear calls for help as well. We don't just want them to be saying what the situation is. We're wanting them to say, I need help and this is the sort of help that I need. And we also are looking for clarity about the situation. Are they being very direct and very upfront with what has happened? And we don't want to see any of these red flags. Storytelling. Quite often, if it's a deceptive 911 call, if it's someone who's guilty, someone who's done the crime that they're reporting, they'll start storytelling, explaining what has happened, trying to build themselves an alibi as well. You know, it wasn't me. I just walked in and found this here. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. We don't want to see storytelling. We don't want to see alibi building. I said we want to see clarity about the situation in a 911 call. What we don't want is over-explaining reasons why the situation has happened. And another red flag which has come out from scientific research into 911 calls is quite often people who are guilty will be overly polite to the operator. They will just, be calling them all sorts of really nice names and saying lots of pleases, lots of thank yous, thanking them for their time and so on. So those are the things that we don't want to see in a 911 call. So are you ready? With all that in mind, let's have a listen to the 911 call that Patsy Ramsey made.
911 emergency. Police. What's going on? 515th Street. What's going on there, ma'am? We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please. Explain to me what's going on, okay? There's a note left and our daughter's gone. A note was left and your daughter is gone? How old is your daughter? 6 years old. She's gone. 6 years old. How long ago was this? I don't know. I just found the note. And my daughter's gone. Does it say who took her? What? Does it say who took her? I don't know. There's a ransom note here. It's a ransom note? It says SBTC. Victory. Please. Okay, what's your name? Are you Patsy Ramsey? I'm the mother. Oh my God. Please. I'm sending an officer over, okay? Please. Do you know how long she's been gone? No, I don't. Please, we just got out. Is she right here? Oh my God, please. Okay, well, there's somebody. I am, honey. Please. Take a deep breath. Please, okay? Hurry.
So what did you spot? Well, let's start at the very beginning, and the operator says 911 emergency, and then Patsy Ramsey. Now, in every transcript I've read, I hear it says police. I wonder if it's actually her saying please and not police, but I think on balance of listening to it a good few times, she does say police, which is a strange word to start with, but it could be please. The operator then says, "What's going on, ma'am?" And Patsy Ramsey says, 755 15th Street. Now, that's a very strange way to answer the question, "What's going on, ma'am?" True, it is something that is really going to be needed inside this call. That's where the help is needed, and the help is needed urgently. That's her address. But it's not exactly the answer to the question, "What's going on, ma'am?" Is it? So what's going on here? Is Patsy not listening to the operator? Does she just know that she needs to get on the phone very quickly and say, "I want the police and I want them at this address," and that's what's coming out because that's a real big priority? Or has she already planned what it is that she's going to say in this call? She's nervous, and that's what comes out is police, 755 15th Street. It's kind of like the rehearsal that's coming out now in real life. The operator says, "What's going on there, ma'am?" And Patsy Ramsey says, "We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please." The first word of Patsy's answer there is "we." So this is showing that it's not just Patsy that's in this situation. There's more than one person in this situation. Now, we know Patsy was married. We also know that there was another child in the house as well as JonBenet. Are they all involved here? Or is Patsy just talking about herself and her husband? Whatever it is, she's not saying, "I have a kidnapping," or even "there's been a kidnapping." That is the big thing here is obviously the kidnapping. But she wants to talk about that in terms of we. Patsy is in this together with someone definitely from we. And then she says, "We have a kidnapping." Now that is passive beyond belief. We have a kidnapping. There's no person mentioned in there whatsoever that has been kidnapped. This is her daughter. This is JonBenet, 6 years old. There is no mention of who is missing. It's what the situation is. It's not the people that it's happening to. And there's no sense of any danger, no sense of any concern for this missing daughter either. It's just this very passive, "we have a kidnapping." And then she adds on, she goes extra. So what's going on there, ma'am? "We have a kidnapping" is a reasonable answer to the question. Then she says, "Hurry, please." So we do have a sense of urgency there. We also have the word please. It's not an order to hurry. It's a nice, polite request. Hurry, please. The operator then says, "Explain to me what's going on, okay?" And Patsy says, There, there's a note left and our daughter's gone." Now she goes to say two things. She starts the sentence with "there," stops, restarts, "we have a," stops. "There's a note left and our daughter's gone." The "we have a" sounds very much like the previous answer. Again, is this rehearsed? Has she got some sort of script in her head? Because the previous answer was "we have a kidnapping." And that seems to be where she's going again. I'm wondering, does she have a script in her head that she's working to here? Was it not that she called 911 immediately there was an emergency to get help? But did she work out what it was that she was going to say? And then the "there," I don't know, but she starts the correct or the corrected version that she wants to get out starts, "There's a note left." So is that what it is she wants to say? Did she start the right line, think it was the wrong line, started another line? Whatever it is, I don't know. But it's interesting that she was going to say two things, thought better of them, restarted and tried again. More unity there. "We have a," our daughter's gone. So I'm taking it there because it's our daughter. The "we" is herself and her husband that she's talking about there. So they are in this situation together, and Patsy is talking for the both of them there. "We have a," there's a note left, and our daughter's gone. The ordering here is very noticeable. There's a note left and our daughter's gone. The priority, I think, would be the fact your daughter is not there. Your daughter has been taken. Your daughter has been kidnapped. Your daughter is in potential danger. And yet, it's not the daughter that gets mentioned first. That's not the priority, is saying the daughter is not here. The priority is saying there's a note left. The note takes priority. Also, the note, what's there, it comes first before what's not there. And what's not there, that fear, should be what's mentioned first. Our daughter's gone and a ransom note has been left behind would be the way I would have expected that. I would have expected the priority to be JonBenet to have been mentioned first. But no. The note comes first. The note is further up Patsy's priority list. The operator says, a note was left and your daughter's gone. And Patsy Ramsey says, yes. Now, this is a great example of someone confirming the answer to a question, and Patsy Ramsey gives a very short answer, a very truthful answer. She says, yes. And this is a great example, just a kind of baseline point about how Patsy Ramsey is going to answer a question honestly. It's going to be very short. There's nothing extra added in there to convince us or persuade us of any sort of storyline or anything like that. It's just a very short answer, yes. The operator says, how old is your daughter? And Patsy says, she's 6 years old. She's blonde, 6 years old. Now, how old is your daughter? She's 6 years old. Perfect, honest answer. And trust me, in 911 calls where there's a lot of deception going on, questions about facts, what's your address? How old is this person? Give me a description of them, are always answered in the same way, very truthfully. There's no point in lying about any of them. No one would lie about any of these things. They are facts. And these are how facts are answered in a very straightforward, direct manner. Although then she says, she's blonde. What has that got to do with how old is your daughter? And what help is saying that to her daughter at all? Could it be that she was ready for a question about describe your daughter, or can we have a description of your daughter? If your daughter's been kidnapped and is missing, one of the most important things we're going to need is a description. So again, does Patsy have a script ready where she's going to say how old JonBenet is and start to describe her? That would chime with the fact that she realizes she's talking things she hasn't been answered here, that she's blonde is completely irrelevant to the question and irrelevant right now in the conversation. Is that why she repeats 6 years old? The 911 operator asked Patsy, how long ago was this? And Patsy Ramsey says, I don't know. I just got the note and my daughter's gone. Now, I've got a reassuring point here. How long ago was this? Patsy Ramsey says, I don't know. Now, I don't know is a great marker of someone telling the truth. People who are telling the truth just say what they know, and if they are asked a question and they don't know the answer, they don't mind saying, I don't know. It's a very reliable indicator of someone telling the truth. People who are lying and they're asked a question, for some reason, they don't want to say, I don't know, because it makes them sound like they might not have all the full facts at their fingertips. And, oh my goodness me, if I don't know the answer to this question, is it going to sound like I'm telling a lie? I better make something else up or just sort of talk around all of this. They very rarely say, I don't know, when they're lying. But Patsy here, when asked, how long ago was this, says, I don't know. She says, I don't know. I just got the note and my daughter's gone. We've got the note coming before the daughter. Again, you can see that. I've made that observation before. This is the second time that is there. I just got the note. So she uses the word just there. To, I guess, say recency, but it could be the note is all I've got. I don't know anymore. I just got the note. But just indicates deception so many times. Just is a word that people use to narrow things down to, don't ask me any more questions. This is just all I've got. Or if it's recency, I just got the note. Just got the note, so that don't ask me anything. I've just got the note. It was so recent that I don't really know anything about it. But she said, I just got the note. Also, she said, I just got the note. I just got the note. Now, as far as I'm aware in the telling of the story, the note was found. The note wasn't given to her, which would be got, or she didn't go and get it from somewhere. They found the note. Well, maybe her husband found the note and she got it from him, but I just got the note. Rings strange to me. And my daughter's gone. Again, that's a bit passive. If she's got a ransom note, then I just got the note and they've taken my daughter, or they've got my daughter, would be a bit more visceral, a bit more urgency, a bit more like she's really feeling it. Instead, it's just my daughter's gone, and the note comes before the daughter again. The operator says, does it say who took her? And Patsy Ramsey's reply is, what? Now, that's Patsy asking a question in reply to a question. And sometimes with this, the reason that people do it is not because they didn't hear it, not because they want clarity. They want to buy thinking time, especially if someone's working to a script, like Patsy might be here. Then so they are asked a question that they don't have a pre-prepared answer for. Asking a question or asking the person to repeat themselves buys you some vital thinking time to come up with the answer, to construct the answer that you want to say. That's what is going on here. Does it say who took her? Patsy Ramsey says what? The operator repeats the question. Does it say who took her? And Patsy Ramsey says, no, I don't know. There's a ransom note here. So, first of all, very direct answer to does it say who took her? No. However, the ransom note, as we know, if you know the case, does say who took her. A small foreign faction, some people who are not very nice and have it in for her husband and identify themselves towards the end. The note does say who took her. She then says, I don't know. Again, these are reliable things. I don't know who took her there. Or is it I don't know if the note says who took her or not? I don't know. I don't know. It's me saying it there, not Patsy. But I don't know. There's some reliability in there. And then she says, there's a ransom note there. Now, first of all, this is the first time she's mentioned it's a ransom note. That might kind of go unsaid because it's a kidnapping, but actually this is the first time that the word ransom has been mentioned. But this is extra to the question. Does it say who took her? It's a yes-no question. She can answer that question with yes, no, but instead she says there's a ransom note there. So the note is taking priority. It's coming before the missing daughter, and she's talking about it even when she hasn't been asked to talk about it. Like I said, it's the first time she mentions it's a ransom note, and the operator says it's a ransom note, and Patsy says it says SPTC victory. Please. It doesn't answer the question. It's a ransom note. Yes. No, yes, they're asking for a certain amount of money, but she doesn't answer that question. Again, is she working from the script here and reading out or going with answers that she has pre-prepared, because it's starting to get a bit stressed now. She's being asked questions that she doesn't have answers ready for, and so she's just blurting out things that are in this pre-prepared script. Is that what is going on here? It's a ransom note. It says SBTC victory, please. And you also note there is a please there as well. So we have more of this pleading with the person, but being very polite about it. The 911 operator says, okay, what's your name? Are you Kath? And Patsy Ramsey says, Patsy Ramsey, I'm the mother. Oh my God, please. She answers this question. A very easy question to answer. What's your name? And she gives her name and gives her relationship to the child. I'm her mother. And then she finishes with another bit of politeness. Please. Okay, I'm sending an officer over. Okay, says the 911 operator, Patsy Ramsey. Please again. And this is not answering the question. This is just repeating the word please as she run out of things to say. The operator says, do you know how long she's been gone? And Patsy Ramsey says, no, I don't. Please. We just got up and she's not here. Oh my God, please. So in response to the question, do you know how long she's been gone? She says, no, I don't. So that is no, I don't know. So we have another I don't know here. Please. We just got up and she's not there. So we've got the please again. So she's really pleading, but being very nice, very polite about it. We just got up. So there's this unity again with at least her husband. But we've got just here again. Did they just get up? We just got up and she's not here. And when she talks about her daughter, it's always not here or gone. There's no other way of describing it in her head, like someone's got her, she's been taken. It's just the absence of JonBenet that she talks about. She's not here or she's not gone. And she finishes with one more please. And I think at this point, the rest of the conversation with the operator's trying to get her to calm down, and she's saying, please, and hurry, hurry, hurry. I think this is Patsy run out of things to say. She says, please send somebody. That is urgent. And that is not urgent, but that is asking for help. She wants somebody there. The please is very, very polite. The hurry, hurry, hurry gives some urgency to it. Sometimes when you look at a call like this or any statement, it's good to look at what's missing. And what's missing here for me, any mention of a third party, any mention of the person who has come into their home, left this note, and most importantly, taken their daughter. There's no mention of a third party whatsoever. It's not, they've got my daughter, they've left a note. It's very passive, the whole thing. There's no talk about who's done it or who's missing at all. There's just no mention, especially of this third party, a person who would appear to have broken into the Ramsey home, has appeared to have control, hold of her child, and has left a ransom there demanding quite big things from them. There's no sense of mystery there as well. I don't mean like a Scooby-Doo mystery. I mean that Patsy Ramsey isn't talking in any way about, I don't know who did this or what on earth could they want or anything like that. She just doesn't seem to bring any sense of mystery to it at all. And also the note had warnings in it not to contact the police or authorities, and Patsy doesn't mention them to the police, which I would have expected to hear. They told us not to contact the police, but we think better and we think we should be contacting the police. Can you be quiet when you come round? Can we come and meet you? Or, there's no conversation like that in it. The warnings in the note are not passed on to the police at all. So with all that in mind, let's go back to the things we want to see in a 911 call. Did we see urgency? I think we did see some urgency, especially in hurry. Clear calls for help. I don't think we saw clear calls for help. I think she didn't say what kind of help she wanted, apart from please send somebody. But there were calls for help. I don't think what the help she wanted was clear at all. There was clarity about the situation, but I thought it was a very strange kind of clarity about the situation. There's a note and my daughter's gone. And did we see any of the red flags? Did we see storytelling? I think we did a bit. Did we see alibi building? I mean, only in potentially one line, which is we just got up. Reasons for the situation I did not see, but over politeness, lots of pleases I did see. Let's have another listen and see what we can spot.
911 emergency. Police. What's going on? 515th Street. What's going on there, ma'am? We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please. Explain to me what's going on, okay? There's a note left and our daughter's gone. A note was left and your daughter is gone? How old is your daughter? 6 years old. She's gone. 6 years old. How long ago was this? I don't know. I just found the note. And my daughter's gone. Does it say who took her? What? Does it say who took her? I don't know. There's a ransom note here. It's a ransom note? It says SBTC. Victory. Please. Okay, what's your name? Are you Patsy Ramsey? I'm the mother. Oh my God. Please. I'm sending an officer over, okay? Please. Do you know how long she's been gone? No, I don't. Please, we just got out. Is she right here? Oh my God, please. Okay, well, there's somebody. I am, honey. Please. Take a deep breath. Please, okay? Hurry. Patsy.
So what are my conclusions? Well, look, there are some reassuring factors in that call. There is a sense of urgency there that she's asking them to hurry. And she does say, I don't know, to a couple of questions. But it's way too passive. The way her daughter is mentioned, the fact that whoever left the note, whoever has her child, not mentioned at all. It's just, she's talking about a situation that is in front of her, not a much larger thing that's happening all around her and while she was asleep. No concern is expressed at all for her daughter. That's a big red flag for me. She has no concern in her words for her daughter, who has been kidnapped in her own telling of the story. The note is more important than the missing child, and every mention of it, the note comes before the missing child, and that for me is a big red flag. And there's signs that she knows more than she says. If I had to put all that together, I think there's definitely some sort of cover-up going on. Is Patsy aware of everything that she's covering up? Maybe not. Maybe that's why there is the urgency. Maybe that's why she's able to say, I don't know, as an answer to question. But it's definitely, she knows more than she says. And I believe that she knows way more about how the note came to be there than she lets on as well. Today, the JonBenet Ramsey ransom note. who wrote it. We're going to look at this true crime classic, and I'm not going to try and tell you who did it or what happened to the poor girl. I'm going to look only at the ransom note because, hey, this is all about the words people use, and so is this ransom note. So I don't need to set the story up for you, but there was this 2.5-page ransom note left when allegedly JonBenet's parents noticed that she was missing. So we're going to look at that, and we're going to look at the word choice inside this ransom note through the prism of truthful deception. And the part of truthful deception we're really going to look at this time is that lying is hard work. It's really hard to tell a lie. To tell the truth is really easy because we just say what we know, what we feel, and what we've experienced. To tell a lie, we have to construct a lie. We have to create it in our heads and keep in mind all the things that we know, all the things we've experienced, all the things that we feel to check that the lie tallies with them. So most of us will tell the truth because keeping a lie going is stressful and tiring. And I think that's what we're going to see in this note. Don't forget, this isn't just about having a laugh at whoever wrote this note. This is about giving you some skills and some techniques so that you can look at the words and statements all around you, whether that is in a documentary on TV, an interview that you're watching, or even just your friends and family to see if they're telling the truth or not, just by analysing the words. If you've got a subscribe button, then press that, and that means you will get more videos like this and you will upskill yourself very quickly on being able to understand what people are saying all around you. If there's a like button in front of you, I think about 1 in 10% of people who watch my videos press the like button. So you in that elite group, or are you with the herd that don't press the like button? The power of the like button is amazing. A video like this takes quite a long time to put together, hours in fact. It comes to you cost free, so if you'd like to press that like button, it does so much good. And as always, I love to hear your comments, questions or observations. I'm sure there will be so many on this, so if you share those either here on this platform or by social media, then if there's enough of them, we'll do a follow-up episode to this to deal with some of your questions or your comments, your observations or suggestions. So let's get into the words, and the things I want you to watch for, things that happen with liars because lying is hard, is disappearance. What things are mentioned and then just sort of disappear or dribble away because they're not real, and the person doing the writing in this case doesn't have the ability to keep that lie going. And also inconsistency, that thing of lying is hard because you have everything that you know is real and the lie has to match up with that as much as possible, which leads to a lot of inconsistency. So let's get into this ransom note. It begins, Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. 4 words in, and I can tell you quite a lot. Mr. Ramsey, John Ramsey, he is the intended recipient of this note. This is all addressed to him. It's not addressed to anyone else. So this is all about Mr. Ramsey. And then listen carefully. This is a written note. Listen carefully. Interesting. Read carefully. Pay attention, but listen carefully. Why was that chosen? One possibility is that this note was dictated or spoken about. That would be why you use words like listen carefully. It continues, we are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. Interesting choice of words there. We, so this letter is to one person, Mr. Ramsey, but at the start it's coming from more than one person. We, and it's a group, so that's that. But then a group of individuals. What other type of group is there? And we'll see all the way through this note that words and concepts that just don't need to be said are brought in. We are a group of individuals. Now, the strongest theory about this was it was written inside the Ramsey's house. So that was me. I wouldn't think I had a minute to waste writing out things that didn't need to be written, but that seems to be something that happens quite a lot here. We are a group of individuals. Represent is an interesting word there. So not saying they're from this small foreign faction or are this small foreign faction. They just represent the small foreign faction. What does that mean? I mean, it could be they're mercenaries working for this faction, but very interesting that they've chosen to use the word represent rather than being that small foreign faction. And foreign is an interesting way of looking at it as well, because we very rarely describe ourselves as foreign. We think of other people as foreign. If they don't come from where we come from, then they are foreign. But we very rarely think of ourselves as foreign. Same with faction. People don't consider themselves a faction. They consider themselves a group or a cause or something like that. People don't consider themselves as a faction. Faction is the outsider looking in. So what's going on here? Well, it's certainly outsiders looking in. And it could be that mercenary theory I spoke about. So they represent this foreign faction. So mercenaries would be outsiders. They would represent people. They would think that people from another country are foreign, and they would think they are a faction. The other thing that could be going on in here, and I'm pretty damn sure this is what's going on, is that this is just total tosh. It's not written from the point of view of individuals representing a small foreign faction or people in a small foreign faction at all. I'm just on the first line of any meat in this ransom note, then I think this is deception in this note. I don't believe that this is a note from a group of individuals representing a small foreign faction. The words just don't add up. The note continues, we, and then there's something crossed out, and that a lot of people look at what's crossed out and think that it's significant. It might be, but on the other hand, we all make mistakes. We cannot tell anything from what is crossed out. Was it deliberate? Was it a mistake that leads to something and tells you something? It could be. Ultimately, though, we all make mistakes. We all misspeak. You cannot read too much into one thing. So we respect your business, but not the country that it serves. At this time, we have your daughter in our possession. She is safe and unharmed, and if you want her to see 1997, you must follow our instructions to the letter. All of this, why is any of this important to say? Is it to get across the fact that business is not the target specifically? Is this protecting John's business? We will see a lot of protecting of John Ramsey going through this letter. So could that be why that is there? Look, again, this is coming from more than one person. We respect, we have your daughter, our possession, follow our instructions. So this is building on that opening, which was we and our. This is all from one person. It says here that she is safe and unharmed. And I wonder why they wanted to bring this up at the moment. I think one of the reasons why it could be, and we'll see as we go through the letter, I think this was written after JonBenet was killed. So I don't believe at this point she is safe and unharmed, and it's why they have mentioned that at this point. Remember I said I don't think these people are foreign. They say if you want her to see 1997. Now, this does not mean anything. All I will say is that that is a very Western and very Christian concept, to talk about someone seeing the next year in that calendar, that the new year is celebrated in that way at that time, is a Western concept. What is the motivation behind this group? Why are they doing what they're doing? We respect your business, but not the country that it serves. It doesn't say anything at all. It doesn't say why they respect the business, and it doesn't say why they don't respect the country that it serves. So who is the target here? Is America the target here, or does John's company serve other countries? I don't know. But there's nothing to link in because we don't like America. We've kidnapped your daughter. That it doesn't say that. It's kind of what it is alluding to, but it doesn't say that. I think, again, this is deception. When we're deceiving and we don't have the authentic feelings and thoughts inside us, then we find it much harder to verbalize it or write down what is going on. And I think that's what is going on here. Deception. I don't think this is about a hatred for America or any other country that John Ramsey's business serves, or about his business. They respect his business, apparently. At this time, we have your daughter. She is safe and unharmed. And I found that combination of wording, again, this is why I think she was dead at the time this was written. At this time introduces the concept of at this time, so potentially there is a future time when she will not be safe and unharmed, as if they know the outcome that is going to happen. At this time, she is safe and unharmed. At a future time, she is not going to be. The note continues, you will withdraw $118,000 from your account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills. Make sure that you bring an adequate sized attaché to the bank. The last segment that we looked at started with respect for John's business, and here there's more care for John. John has to make sure that he brings an adequate sized attaché to the bank. They want John to get it right, which is very, very interesting. There is concern here for John. But when I look at the whole thing here, this is from the point of view of the person doing the withdrawing of the money. You will withdraw the money from your account. Now, they don't know John's financial arrangements. Well, they obviously do know something about John's financial arrangements, but they know that in his account is that money. So they haven't said you will get us £118,000. Don't care how. Could come from your business account, could come from your savings account, could come from your checking account. No, that will be withdrawn from your account. They know, the person who's written this knows there's £118,000 in the account. Interesting. Really, really interesting. You will withdraw, not get. You know, it's what these people care about is the money. It would seem to be. If it is an abduction, a kidnapping, this is a ransom note. Shouldn't care where the money comes from, but they know where that money is going to come from. They know exactly where that money is going to come from. For me, this is written in the eyes of the withdrawer. You're going to get that money out your account. By the way, make sure you bring an adequate size attaché to the bank. Do you ever go shopping and take a bag with you? And you make sure, I'm going to get a few bottles of wine today, so I'm going to take a big bag that can carry a few bottles of wine because they're heavy. This is in the mind of the person doing the withdrawing, not in the mind of the person wanting money. The note continues. When you get home, you will put the money in a brown paper bag. I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on delivery. We've got the repeated concept of the money is in this attaché case and then it's going to be moved to the brown paper bag. But notice that this person assumes or knows that John Ramsey has access to a brown paper bag big enough to take that consignment of banknotes that has been ordered, because he's not asked to make sure he has a brown paper bag that's big enough to hold the money, only asked to get the attaché case that is big enough to hold the money. They know where this money is, and they know there's a brown paper bag somewhere in John's reach that is big enough to hold this money. This section here shows they have a lot of knowledge of John Ramsey's situation. And if you look at just all of this, it could be written from the viewpoint of the person doing the withdrawing, because it's all about them. It's not about what the person writing the ransom note wants. It's about the actions that the person getting the money will take. Interesting. The note continues. The delivery will be exhausting, so I advise you to be rested. If we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you early to arrange an earlier delivery of the money and hence an earlier delivery pickup of your daughter. Concern for John again. The delivery will be exhausting, so I advise you to be rested. We keep seeing this concern for John through this note. Notice that we're starting to go between I and we now in writing this. So I advise you, that means comes from one person. Previously it's all been we, but if we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you to arrange an earlier delivery. So we're starting to mix up the I's and the we's. And this is interesting. If we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you early. They haven't actually said when he should get the money. So how would he know what early is? Yeah, said they'd call between 8 and 10, quite a wide window. But They haven't said how to get the money early. There's a step missing there. And why say this at all? Why not just give a precise time there? Again, written from the viewpoint of the person. Oh, I might get the money early. The person demanding the money might just give them a deadline for the time, but they know John can get this money from the bank really quickly. Is that what's going on? Does the person writing this know how quickly John can get the money from the bank? And he could do it earlier than that, 8 o'clock in the morning. It's really, really strange. The knowledge this person seems to have of what is going on in John's world. Pickup of your daughter worries me. Again, pickup feels, it's not safe return. It's an earlier delivery pickup of your daughter. I don't like that. Again, makes me think that they're not talking about a person that is alive. More from the note. Any deviation of my instructions will result in the immediate execution of your daughter. You will also be denied her remains for proper burial. Any deviation of my instructions. Not you will do exactly as I say. They seem to offer John a lot of choice in this note. And there can be deviations of my instructions. They're just not in charge of what's happening here. John seems to be the one that's in charge of what's happening here. Any deviation of my instructions, I'm sure you've noticed as well, it's my instructions. It's from one person again. All the way through this note, they refer to JonBenet as your daughter, never by any name. They know a lot about John, about his business, about how much money he's got in the bank, about the brown paper bags he has able to lay his hands on. But they don't, well, I'm not saying they don't know what JonBenet's name is, but there's a distance there. She is always referred to as your daughter. We've seen a lot of concern for John, but now here comes some brutal language. The execution of your daughter, her remains, proper burial, the sadistic language there that comes through here. Really quite brutal language. But still concern for John, because any parent who has a daughter killed or even just has a daughter that dies would want a proper burial, and they are thinking in John's terms again, that he would want a proper burial, and that it should affect him, that he won't get a proper burial. So again, it's almost at John's point of view. They are thinking about the things that he would like. The note continues, the two gentlemen watching over your daughter do not particularly like you, so I advise you not to provoke them. Again, this is from one person. I advise you. And these two gentlemen do not particularly like you. That's very soft. Not hate you, abhor you, do not like the things you do or the company or country you serve. No, they just do not particularly like you. Could be a little bit sarcastic, but interesting. Why do they just not particularly like you? It seems to be again on sort of John's side. We all know people that we don't particularly like. We don't hate them. We wouldn't kidnap their children. These just do not particularly like you. Really interesting choice of words. Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as the police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beheaded. Another brutal word there. They are not skipping the brutality of what could happen to JonBenet or what, in fact, this is worse than what happens to her, I would think. So, really, really brutal language. Again, from John's point of view, speaking to anyone about your situation. It's in the head of John. These guys really, really good at being in the head. It's not speaking to anyone about this, or speaking to anyone about what's happening, or if anyone finds out about what's going on, or keep this between ourselves. No, it's talking about your situation, the situation that you are in. And we always think about our own situation, not often about other people's situations. Interesting. And I would just want you to note, before we move on to the next part, that the first group of people that he is told not to speak to are the authorities, the police, the FBI. Here's the next section. If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. If you alert bank authorities, she dies. If the money is in any way marked or tampered with, she dies. You will be scanned for electronic devices, and if any are found, she dies. So we're into a very lyrical phase of this. You know, it's almost got a rhythm and a beat to it here. Well, I mentioned the first group of people that he was told not to talk to were the authorities, the police and the FBI. And then it's a dog. Then it's bank authorities. Then the note should not be marked or tampered. And electronic devices are also a no-no. The order we list something in is normally really important. It gives us some indication of someone's priorities. But here they are. The police, a dog in second place. Bank authorities, marked notes, electronic devices, I get, along with the police. Why does this dog come in second? Why do they, I know it's metaphorical, but why introduce again this concept that is just not needed to be there? Don't talk to the police, don't talk to the bank authorities, don't mark or tamper with the money, and do not have electronic devices. Again, look at the repetition of you, John, you. This is really focused on what John does. You talking to a stray dog. You alert the bank authorities. You will be scanned. This is all about John's actions. More brutality, you might have noticed as well, the repetition of she dies, she dies, she dies, she dies. But look how qualified this is. He can talk to a stray dog, and only trouble will happen if we catch you. The same thing with electronic devices. If any are found, then bad things will happen. It doesn't just blanket outright say, don't talk to anyone, don't have any electronic devices, you will be scanned, right? So only bad things will happen if they catch them. You can try to deceive us, but be warned, we are familiar with law enforcement countermeasures and tactics. You stand a 99% chance of killing your daughter if you try to outsmart us. Once again, we've got the brutality there with the word killing. No problems using brutal language about this young girl, JonBenet. Again, John is given the freedom here. You can try to deceive us. These are not instructions. This is allowing him, giving him the free agency to do what he wants. Yeah, it does say that there will be repercussions if he does, but really this person is letting John kind of do what he wants. And here, again, John is the centre here. You stand a 99% chance of killing your daughter. It is saying that John will be the person who kills his daughter. That's really, really brutal. But once more, all about John. He's told, follow our instructions and you stand a 100% chance of getting her back. You stand a 100% chance? Well, 100% is not a chance. It's a certainty. So again, I think this was written when they knew what the outcome was. They knew that JonBenet was dead. Because even though they're saying it's 100%, they're still referring to it as a chance of getting her back. You and your family are under constant scrutiny as well as the authorities. Scrutiny is an interesting word because scrutiny is when you look at something, you examine it, and then you decide what you think. So there's nothing in there of you and your family are being watched. One false step, bad things will happen. Yeah? No, it's scrutiny. They're being watched to see how they react. Interesting choice of words. The next section of the note is, don't try to grow a brain, John. You are not the only fat cat around, so don't think that killing will be difficult. Don't underestimate us, John. Use that good southern common sense of yours. It's up to you now, John. Now we seem to have another reason for why this is happening. So what have we had before? We've had the fact that they don't respect the company. And now we've got that John is a fat cat. He's a very rich businessman. So there's no consistency as to why this is happening. Remember, the people don't particularly like John as well. Well, that seemed quite personal. This is more about the fact that he's got money, that he's a businessman. Just no consistency as to why this is happening. Again, why I think this is a deceptive note. Once again, don't try to grow a brain, John, is quite a gentle jibe. You know, that's the sort of thing you say to someone, oh, Don't try and grow a brain, John. Just do the simple thing. It's not you're stupid, you're an absolute idiot, so do not think that you can outsmart us at all. No, it's just don't try to grow a brain, John. And also, fat cat is one of the nicer ways of talking about businessmen that you don't like. You could call them greedy, rich, abusive, exploitative, whatever it is that you want to call them. Fat cat is quite a nice way of describing that group of people that you don't like. I found this section interesting. Don't try to grow a brain, John. Use that good Southern common sense of yours. Now, what you might notice as well, good Southern common sense of yours is a nice thing to say about John. He's got common sense. It's a good thing. Very nice about John here, and certainly when they could be horrible, they refrain from being really, really horrible to him. But it strikes me, have you ever been in a situation where you've made a mistake, you've erred, you've done something you shouldn't, you've deleted computer files you shouldn't, you've got yourself into some sort of trouble with your mouth or something like that, and you negatively self-talk to yourself and go, oh, a bloody idiot, I shouldn't have done that. And then eventually you calm down a bit and then you go, well, wait a minute, I'm a sensible person, or I've got some good ideas, or if I just do the right thing now, we can get out from beyond this. I can ask for help, or I can undelete the file, or whatever it is. And that's what this pattern of speech reminded me of. Don't try to grow a brain, John. Damn, I've done something stupid. Use that common sense of yours, but I have common sense. I am a smart person. I can get myself out of this. That's what that section reminded me of. And once again, it's up to you now, John, is giving John all the power, giving John all the freedom. The note finishes with victory, SBTC, and enough has been spoken about that part. I won't go into it. So that's the note. I said, look for what disappears. Well, what disappears? The group of people, the faction is mentioned once and then never again. The foreigners, that's mentioned once and disappears. The hatred for America disappears. We don't respect your country, never mentioned again. And the safety of JonBenet is not mentioned again. She's safe and unharmed at the very beginning, but that disappears entirely and it only talks about bad things happening to her. What does appear during the note? Control for John. It says it's in your hands, but it gives him more and more control over what happens, gives him permission to try and do the wrong thing. It does say don't try it, but it does say you can try it, you can do this. So control for John grows as this letter continues, as does the violent language that comes in talking about JonBenet. And what's inconsistent here? The reasons for the abductions, we've spoken about that as we've gone on. Is it because he serves America or some other country? Is it because they don't like him personally? Is it because he's a fat cat? They're just inconsistent reasons as to why this happens. And also the pronouns, that sometimes it's we, us, our, and sometimes it's I, my. So sometimes it's representing a lot of people, sometimes it's only representing one people. What themes do we see coming through in the letter as well? I see the theme of the death of JonBenet. That is one of the repeated concepts all the way through this, as is the brutality of the death. That is mentioned a lot. And the common theme all the way through, from how it opens to how it is written, John Ramsey is at the centre of this. So what conclusions have you got? What do you think, having looked at the words and having thought of that? I know what I think. I think whoever wrote this is very close to John Ramsey. So close, they can envision things through his point of view. They know what's in his head. They know what resources he has, from paper bags through to money in his bank account. So close to John Ramsey that they find it easier to say very brutal things about his daughter than to make properly disparaging remarks about him. This note is much kinder about John Ramsey than it is about his daughter, and I think that is very significant. And I think it was written after JonBenet was killed. Look, I want to be very clear. I don't know what happened to JonBenet. I don't know who was responsible. But if you ask me right now, who do I think wrote or dictated that note, John Ramsey would be the person that best fits my observations. You're learning from this. If you take away anything, just watch when people are talking for things that disappear, things they mention once and then don't mention again, and inconsistency in what people say. Both of those things will imply that some deception is happening. This is something a bit different where I'm going to start at the end. I've watched the episode, I've broken it down, all 1.5 hours of it, and I've used theme analysis. The theory behind that is that when we talk, especially when we talk for a long time, then looking at the themes that we repeat, the words that we repeat, the concepts that we repeat, they can reveal a lot about what is inside our head and what the priority is. So that is what I have done with Jon Ramsey in this 1.5 hour long interview. We'll go into a deep dive into some of the things he says, but first, here's what I noticed across that whole 1.5 hours. Jon Ramsey has perfect recall about these events. 28 years ago at the time of recording, he has perfect recall on events of that time when it suits him. When it gets his point across, he's pin sharp on what went down. At other times, when there's a bit of a high pressure question put to him, how could this have happened? All of a sudden, he mentions that it was chaos that day, that I can't really remember what happened. It was a long time ago. Interesting. In this interview, Jon Ramsey talks about Burke, the son that survived. He's still around today. He talks about Burke way more than he talks about JonBenet. We'll look at why that might be as we go through this episode. Jon Ramsey likes to divert the conversation from this high stress conversation and talking about the murder of your daughter, no matter what your involvement is in it, is going to be high stress. And he likes to divert away into things that are much easier, much more comfortable for him to talk about, like business, like money. He was a businessman. He had a lot of money, although he claims he didn't, bizarrely. He likes to divert away into subjects like that. Jon Ramsey makes lots of mentions of friends of the family. I heard it's been said that he's a very sociable person, but certainly he talks a lot about friends, a lot about his friends. And interestingly, he blames or excuses a lot of his actions, good and bad actions, and his choices on friends and advice from friends and what friends were saying to him. We'll see a bit of that in this episode as well. In this episode, and every time I've seen Jon Ramsey speak, he has a lot of issues with the police investigation. It's an unsolved case. For 28 years, his daughter has been murdered, and it's never been said by the police what happened, and he has a lot of issues with that. But his issues don't seem to be verbalized, that they have not found the killer. They have not found the person that murdered my daughter. My daughter has received no justice. No, his issues with the police investigation were the suspicion that were put on him and his wife, Patsy, at the time. That's very interesting. It's not quite what we would expect. And throughout this 1.5 hour interview with Jon Ramsey by Crime Junkie, he has an insane lack of curiosity. He knows what happened to him, he knows his part in it, but when it's said to him, did you ask Burke about this? Did you ask your friend about this? He says, no, I didn't ask. He has an insane lack of curiosity into what happened to his daughter, JonBenet Ramsey. Right, are you ready for some breakdown? Let's look at the first question and answer that I want to look at. And this is him being asked about suspicion being on his wife, Patsy, JonBenet's mum.
Why is it her that everyone became fixated on?
Patsy was a very strong woman. Maybe didn't come across so good on television, I was told by people. But she was a wonderful mother. She's a wonderful stepmother. And I never heard her say anything negative about anybody. She's just a good person. And so for her to take the brunt of that assault is just so unfair. When we lost JonBenet, she got very focused on Burke. I mean, that was our goal, was try to give him as normal a childhood as we could possibly give him amidst all this chaos that was going around us. We were afraid. Somebody had attacked our family. We don't know who it was. And we were frightened, quite frankly. And one of the challenges was we wanted to keep Burke out of video and pictures so that people would know what he looked like. And so how do we get him from, we were living with friends when we were in Boulder, so he could finish his school year. How do we get him to school without being photographed? And it became a project. And the way it was diversion from grieving. We would send out a decoy car. Burke would be in another car on the floor in the back seat.
Just to go to school?
Yeah, to go to school. And we'd get him to school unphotographed because we wanted to protect him.
Did you spot some of the themes that I spoke about there from John Ramsey as he's talking? The question is, why is it her everyone became fixated on? It's a question about Patsy. Why is it her everyone became fixated on? And he starts by answering the question. He says, I don't know, talks about Patsy being a strong woman, didn't come across very well on television, but a wonderful mother, a wonderful stepmother. And for her to take the brunt of that assault is just so unfair. Assault being an interesting word to use compared to the assault that happened to his daughter. So he does answer the question, but then he talks about focusing on Burke. He brings Burke into this. The question is about Patsy, and he starts talking about Burke and what they did to protect Burke, in his words. And he finishes off talking about Burke going to school because we wanted to protect him. The distance from the question, why did people become fixated on Patsy as a suspect in the murder of your daughter? What he finishes up by saying about he got to school without people taking photographs of him is large and massive. Why is he diverting? Why is he going on to talk about Burke, which is obviously either he wants to change the subject of the answer, or that is just something that he feels way more comfortable talking about than talking about the fixation people had on Patsy. Very interesting diversion there. Let's break that answer down a little bit more. Why is it her? Everyone became fixated on talking about Patsy, and he says, I don't know. That's his first words, I don't know. Now, I don't know is generally a reliable indicator of someone telling the truth. Truthful people don't mind saying, I don't know. Liars like to have an answer for everything. They like to pretend they've thought about everything, that there's some depth to their lies. So liars are more likely to go into a different sort of answer, try to persuade us or convince us of something, unlike people who are telling the truth have no problem saying, I don't know. And that's what he starts by saying, I don't know. He does pay a bit of tribute to Patsy, saying she was a very strong woman. Maybe she didn't come across so good on television. So I believe this is his answer, whether it's his truthful answer or whether it's something he wants to get across to us. Maybe didn't come across so good on television. So that seems to me to be his answer. And then potentially, and we'll see why in a minute, he realizes that's not a nice thing to say about your dead wife, about the wife that has died, that has been a suspect in this murder, or not a suspect in the murder, but people think she might have done it. So he then says, I was told by people this. So he doesn't want to own that view. And I think maybe he does own the view that Patsy didn't come across very good on television. She didn't. And he's probably realized that in a moment of reflection. But he wants to talk nicely about Patsy, whether that is to convince everyone what a nice person she is and she couldn't possibly have done a murder, or whether that's just part of society. We don't like talking ill of the dead. He seems to want to remove himself from that opinion and say, I was told by people, which is part of this blaming things on other people, blaming bad things, blaming choices on other people. Interestingly, there he says, I was told by people, which is very unspecified, just people. Doesn't say whether it was friends, family, advisors, lawyers, PR people. We don't know what sort of people. When someone tells you that people have told them something, dig into it, because people is kind of a catch-all, and people can use people. That's maybe a bit of a roundabout way of saying it. As others can use the word people to blame their own opinions on. They don't want to say, this is my opinion, so they pretend it's the opinion of people. So I think not entirely true there, that one. He then eulogizes, but she was a wonderful mother. She was a wonderful stepmother. And I never heard her say anything negative about anybody. She was just a good person. This is a eulogy for a dead person. We have a norm in our society that we don't speak ill of the dead. We talk nicely about the dead. That doesn't mean we tell the truth about the dead then, because none of us are all good, none of us are all bad. And this, I don't think, is very much weight to it. I just think it's a eulogy for a dead person. And you can see that he talks in absolutes. So he's never heard anything, never heard her say anything negative about anybody. Really? Do you believe that? Do you believe that in all their married life, John Ramsey never, that is not once, not for one time, heard her say anything negative about anybody? Do you believe that? I don't. It's an absolute. So I think this is just bland platitudes that are coming out there. Also notice it's in the negative. It's not she always had good things to say about people, which would be a positive statement. It's in the negative. That shows where his focus is. So I actually think Patsy was well known for saying negative things about people. Maybe she kept that between her and John and didn't do it publicly, but I do believe that what he's letting out there is that Patsy's had negative things to say about people. Also, you'll just notice the distance that he puts in this as well. It's not that she never said anything negative about anybody, it's that he never heard her say that. So actually, when you break into his words, the truth is that Patsy, he, in his words, may well have said negative things about people. He's only saying if he never heard her do that. She was just a good person, and just is a word that indicates deception. She was just a good person. No one is all a good person like this there. We have to ask, why is he doing that? Is that part of our societal norms that we don't talk ill of the dead? Or is he doing some image management for Patsy? He doesn't want people to think Patsy is the murderer of JonBenet, and therefore he's going to say this blatantly false tribute to her. We've got another just, so for her to take the brunt of that assault is just so unfair. So this is a persuasive just so unfair. He could have left those two words out. For her to take the brunt of the assault is unfair, but he wants to show us how unfair it is. He wants to turn the severity up there. So it's just so unfair. So I think, again, what we're seeing here, slight little bits of deception. Now, not all deception is malicious, but he doesn't think it's that unfair. He understands why people at least became fixated on Patsy. Partly her character might not have always been perfect, and partly she didn't come across very well on television. That's what he's saying. He goes on to say, when we lost JonBenet, she got very focused on Burke, and this is his off-ramp. This is where the diversion starts. So he has answered the question. I will give him credit points for answering the question, but he then takes this off-ramp from JonBenet and getting focused on Burke. And then from this point on, he will only talk about Burke in this answer. He's taken the off-ramp from the highway and gone onto a road that he feels much safer on. What's interesting is that he says, when we lost JonBenet, she got very focused on Burke. So that is just Patsy. She got very focused on Burke. But he then says, I mean that our goal, so that's him and Patsy, was to try and give him as normal a childhood as we could amidst all the chaos that was going on around us. So while the first thing he says is she got focused on Burke, interestingly, when he talks about what happened with Burke, it's a joint action. It's not just Patsy doing it, it's him and Patsy. So again, I think he wants to say, yes, she was a loving mum and really got focused on Burke. But when he actually talks about the focus that was on Burke, it wasn't just Patsy, it was Patsy and him. He talks about this happening amid all the chaos that was going on around us. And we've got that theme of chaos that he is going to use time and time and time again. Interestingly, that chaos was going around us. They weren't part of the chaos. The chaos was happening around them as he sees it, but the chaos was not, they were like the eye of the storm, calm and quiet, because the chaos wasn't involving them, it was going on around them. A nice bit of honesty, though. He says that they wanted to give Burke as normal a childhood as we could possibly give him. So he's not overly trying to persuade us there and saying we wanted him to, we gave him the most normal childhood possible. In there, as we could possibly give him, there's some vagueness there, could and possibly, vague words. So just there in his words, he is not saying to us that we gave Burke a very normal childhood. He's saying Burke's childhood wasn't normal, but it was as normal as possible. He then goes on to say, We were afraid somebody had attacked our family, and then goes on to talk about all this photography. Now, this is his safer ground. He's taken that off-ramp onto this safe road that he feels really safe and comfortable talking about what they did with Burke after the murder. But even here, he's got some stress because he's stuttering, starting a thought, and then going back and giving us another thought. Like, we did what? He doesn't say, but he says we were afraid at the end of it. We were afraid. One of the challenges was and then he doesn't say how do what. He says, we wanted to keep Burke out of video and pictures, and that's very stop-start. How do we get him from we were living with friends? So again, we've got a restart and thought there. In a way, it was a diversion. So again, he's thinking his words through carefully here, but there's a bit of stress and stuttery there. It was a diversion from grieving. We'd sent out a decoy car, so we've got lots of indications of stress and picking his words carefully. In all of this section, really we have a lot of detail. I think that detail is padding. He could have told this story a hell of a lot shorter without just adding in some of the detail about decoy cars and so on. And I think this is padding. This is somewhere that he feels safe and secure talking. So he's moved the conversation from everyone being fixated on Patsy through to this nice, comfortable place of talking about what they did with Burke. And because it's nice and comfortable, I'm going to add extra words in here, add more detail in here, because I'm much more comfortable talking here than on the subject I was asked about, which is the fixation on Patsy. At the very beginning of this section, he says, we were afraid somebody had attacked our family. We don't know who it was. Now, we've got that attack word there, but it's attacked our family. Now, that means he must see the murder of JonBenet as an attack on the family. Why is that? Potentially the ransom note would go with that, but this was an attack on your daughter, and this could be got across, the same concept could be got across with someone had attacked our daughter. We didn't know who was next or if they'd come for us, but he's very explicit there that he sees the murder of JonBenet as an attack on our family, and he uses the phrase we don't know again, which I've said can be very honest. We don't know who it was. But there's a moral of the story here from John Ramsey when he talks, which is everyone else is bad and we are good. The photographers that wanted to take the picture, the person that attacked the family, they are bad. Look how good we are as a family. And you will see this moral repeated again and again and again. Watch out for it. He doesn't mention what they were grieving for. He says all this stuff that they did with Burke was a diversion from grieving, but it doesn't say this was grieving for JonBenet or grieving for our daughter at all. He just talks about grieving. He doesn't quite say what they were grieving, and you'll notice that JonBenet has come away here, Patsy has come away here, and this is all now a story about Burke. By the way, he mentions they were living with friends, a very common concept that he talks about his friends a hell of a lot. John Ramsey says that the couple were afraid. They were afraid because someone had attacked our family. And then he talks about something else. He talks about protecting Burke from photographers. This is really interesting because mentioning how afraid they were, I think, is maybe justification for the rest of what they did. But it doesn't quite come across like that because the fear has come from the attack, but the measures that were taken because of that fear, in his words, those are measures to thwart the media, to thwart photographers. That bit doesn't just quite hang together. Right, let's get some more from the interview.
Did you guys have any moments with him where you're asking, I think about like kids, like what are the things that the parents don't know? Like what's happening?
No. You know your children.
Well, and I'm not necessarily talking about like him doing something, but I'm saying like, they hang out together. They have the same group of friends. Like, was there someone that maybe she didn't tell mom and dad about, but she's going to tell her brother about, or her brother? Like, did you guys have any of those like moments with Burke to be like help us figure this out?
No, because we really just wanted him to be separated from it, from the chaos, and we wanted him to be normal, and that was very difficult because being followed around by the media and going through the grocery store line and seeing your sister's picture on the front of the tabloid, it was difficult to give him a normal life.
Do you think he might still know something that he doesn't even know he knows?
No. Burke's a very solid person, despite all. And went to college, graduated, had a good job ever since. Well thought of by his employers, and very, very disciplined. Buys used cars, and he's a good adult. He was a good son. If he knew anything, it would not be something he would thought
is important.
This is quite a bizarre section here. The first question is, did you guys have any moments with him where you were like asking the question? And that's asked again twice there. Did you have any moments with Burke to be like, help us figure this out? And John Ramsey both times says no, but then takes this off-ramp again where he starts talking about it was difficult to give him a normal life. Why is he running from that question? Why is he running away from the question of, did you ask Burke if he knew anything, if he observed anything, if he saw anything? John runs up the off-ramp here, starts talking again about the media and talking about how difficult it was to give Burke a normal life. Again, we've got this off-ramp, we've got this diversion away from the subject in hand and onto something that John obviously feels safer talking about. So let's dig down into it. Did you guys have any moments where you're asking like, what's happening? And he says, no, you know your children well. So he starts off by answering the question, and it's a yes/no question. Did you have any moments with him? Yes, we did. No, we didn't. I don't know, would be another plausible answer. And he says no. He says no twice. Now, in almost every episode I do, when we look at someone who's very suspicious, I will point out how they are asked yes or no questions. That is, questions that can be answered yes, questions that can be answered no, and they don't say yes or no in their answer. Instead, they give a bit of a story. Well, he says straight away, no. Straight away, no. And that must be to his credit. He says, you know your children well. You know your children well. He's not saying, we know Burke well, or I know Burke well. He's telling the interviewer how well they know their children. Why is he doing that? Why is he not talking about Burke? The question's about Burke, but the answer is about our kids. You know your children well. That sometimes can be socializing. That can be, well, how would you be? You would trust your kids, wouldn't you? Just think about it. You're accusing me of, something here, or asking a question. It's a bit personal, a bit deep. Well, how would you feel if that question was asked to you? Or how would you feel if you were in that situation? That can be one reason for using that form of answer. The other one is, it's diversion. I am going to talk about my child. I'm going to talk about your child instead. Once more, the questions. Did you guys have any of those like moments with Burke to be like, help us figure this out? And his first word, once more, is no. I like that. That is a sign of honesty. A bizarre sign of honesty, as we'll come to talk about in a minute, but I do believe that's a sign of honesty. Then we get some persuasive action. No, because we really just wanted him to be separated from the chaos. Now, again, these are words you could take out because they're persuasive. He doesn't want to tell us what happened. He wants to tell us this is really what happened, and just. So he's focusing our attention on just the one thing that happened. It was chaos, but just this one thing happened, and they wanted him to be separated from the chaos. He's trying too hard to persuade us there of his reasons with the words really just. He mentions the chaos again. It's a word he uses a lot to describe events on the day after Christmas, December the 26th, 1996. He talks about that day being chaos. He said that we wanted him to be normal. There's an indication that things were not normal because they wanted to move towards normality, towards things being normal. So there's an indication there in his words, for some reason, that things were not normal. Then he talks about the being followed around by the media, about the fact you'd be standing in a store line and you would see your sister on the front of a tabloid. The moral of the story is there once more. Everyone else is bad. We, the Ramseys, are good. There is one thing I really like in this answer, though, when he's talking about seeing JonBenet's picture on the front of a tabloid in a grocery store. He says, seeing your sister's picture on the front of a tabloid. So he's actually telling the story from Burke's point of view. John isn't saying how hard it was for him to see his daughter's picture on the front of a tabloid, and it may well be hard for him to do that, but he's not talking about that. He's not looking for the sympathy there. He's looking for the sympathy for Burke and how hard it would be on the grocery store line seeing your sister's picture on the front of a tabloid. The questions go on. Do you think he might know something like he doesn't even know he knows? Once more, it's no. No. Now, he does say no twice, which is maybe trying a little bit too hard. But once more, John is asked a yes or no question by the interviewer, and he says no. And then he goes on to give us a resume, I guess, of Burke. But it's really quite odd. He talks about Burke being a very solid person. That's not exactly glowing praise, is it? You know, just try to think about how you'd feel if one of your parents, the first word they chose to describe you was solid. And also, he's disciplined, which again, it's not. It's all very self-contained, isn't it? It's all very inside. It's not outward-looking. It's not about the personality being anything other than solid and disciplined. And also, on an interview that's going to be seen by, I don't know, tens, hundreds of thousands, even millions, one of his plus points is that Burke buys used cars. Apparently that's a good thing. I don't know why it's a good thing. Is it a frugal thing? That's just playing to John's love and focus on money. But Burke buys used cars. Maybe if you've got any more in that, you could let me know in the comments if you can. Burke buys used cars. What I do see is this is process driven. When John talks about the good things about his son Burke, it's all very process driven. There's no emotional things in there at all. It's just all about the process that he goes through, you know, graduating college, got a good job, well thought of by his employers, very, very process driven. We see this a lot in Men versus Women. Men want to be a little bit more buttoned down. They want to talk about the good processes that their children have or their loved ones have. Women will be a little bit more around emotions and feelings and relationships, how they relate to the world. I was interested when he said he was a good son. Now that's in the past tense, and it made me think: is he no longer a good son? Because Burke's always going to be John's son. He was a good son in the past tense, but I think this is something to do with the phrase that comes before it, which is he's a good adult and he was a good son. I think that is something to do with it. I think he means son as in young child type of son. But interestingly, the first thought he has was he is present tense a good adult. And then he feels like he has to add, he was a good son. And then in all of this, so the question is, do you think he might still know something? And if it's important, it might not be something that's important. He doesn't really want to deal with it. We've got this lack of curiosity again. The fact that he has not, in his words, had any conversation of any depth looking at the words of Burke, what Burke knows, what Burke experienced. And that just gets me that there is such a lack of curiosity expressed verbally by John to find out if there's missing anything, to find out if there's a puzzle piece missing. It's very, very, very interesting, this lack of curiosity that John Ramsey has. So what are you thinking then so far? Still to come, we're going to look at more of John talking about Burke, including about the time that Burke became a real suspect in the eyes of many people that follow the JonBenet Ramsey case, and how John talks about that is very, very interesting. If you are a member of the channel or a subscriber of Spotify, by the way, I'm going to look at more in this Crime Junkie interview very shortly in an exclusive episode for members or subscribers on Spotify. We'll look at how John deals with the 911 call and the ransom note questions, and also how he talks about his friend Fleet White, who didn't find JonBenet's body that morning, even though Fleet White apparently looked in the room where JonBenet was and where John found JonBenet later on that day. So that is coming soon. And if you want more on the JonBenet Ramsey case, you can look for the episodes where I look at the ransom note and ask, who wrote that ransom note, and also one breaking down Patsy Ramsey's 911 call to report JonBenet missing, presumed abducted at the time. So you can look out for those on this channel. If you want to subscribe, then that means you will get more episodes like this as soon as they are released. But you feel free to share this. I mean, it is a huge unsolved mystery. And I think what John says is shining some light on what happened, as you'll see when we come to our conclusions. Always interested in your comments. You can let me know here on this platform if you can, or get in touch on social media. All the links are in the show notes. And if you want to become a member on YouTube or a subscriber on Spotify, that means you get episodes like this before anyone else, and exclusive episodes, including the one where I look at more of this interview with John Ramsey, especially how he talks about the ransom, about the 911 call, and about Fleet White. That is coming soon. You become a channel member on YouTube or a subscriber on Spotify to get them. Let's have some more now from the interview with John Ramsey.
I wonder if there's something in there, like, even, so I know in the Dr. Phil, one of the things that came out was the idea that you used a flashlight to put him to sleep, and that he came back down to play with a toy. Like, when he's down and people are sleeping, has he ever talked, like, did he get the sense that someone else was in the home? Did he hear anything? I don't know how long was he up?
No, we've never asked him that. I don't know. I didn't know, frankly, that he got up again. I'm not sure he did. Again, that's fiction. There's so much fiction out there.
Because it's just thrown out there. It's just Dr. Phil who says, you got up to play with a toy, and Burke says, yeah, I did. It was something that I wanted to put together. And then it kind of just like
Well,
away.
you know, again, when we got home, JonBenet had fallen asleep.
But I know you and Burke
I
came.
put her to bed. Burke and I sat down and tried to put together one of his little toys for a little while, just because he wanted to. And then he went off to bed.
You're saying like that whatever Dr. Phil said and Burke said on the show, he didn't come back down?
I didn't know that he came back down, if he did.
Does
He
stuff
may
like
have-
that make you want to be like, oh my gosh, maybe there's something he knows?
Burke would have said something if something was weird, but
Okay.
he may have misunderstood the question
Sure.
too. That
Wow. So here we're talking about Burke and his Dr. Phil interview. And it's put to John Ramsey. Do you know how long he was up? Burke was apparently up on the night that JonBenet was murdered. Do you know how long he was up? And John says, we never asked him that. We've got that lack of curiosity again. I mean, my jaw is dropping here. He says once more that something has come to light that could help shed some light on what happened to his murdered daughter, and he has not asked any more questions about it. He's not dug into it to try and find out what happened. The lack of curiosity is astounding for me. By the way, I said John never asked him any more, and that's true, but he says we've never asked him that. Who's we've? We don't know. Was it him and Patsy? Never asked Burke about that. Or is it John and his team? I don't know, but I'm interested in we've never asked him about that. Potentially, again, this is this relying on friends thing. Is it friends, advisors? Now, he does talk about, how long he was up, and he says, I don't know. That's that thing that I'm always impressed by, someone saying, I don't know. But then he says, right after that, I didn't know. So I don't know. I didn't know. That's in the past. That would mean that you now know. And then he says, I'm not sure he did. So with 3 levels of certainty there. I don't know. I didn't know. I'm not sure that he did. And then he goes blanket and gives a 4th level, which is that's fiction. So I don't know, I didn't know, I'm not sure he did, and then that's fiction. What's going on there? Is it that he's floundering a bit and trying to say, I need to say that this isn't true. I need to say it's not true that Burke got up again, but he gets to it by floundering. I don't know, I didn't know, I'm not sure I did. That's fiction. Or is that certainty in that's fiction to enable this off-ramp again? So you'll notice that he's asked this sensitive question, and what he wants to do is move it on to how much fiction is out there. That's his off-ramp. What he wanted to do there, but he gets interrupted, was once more the sensitive questions being asked, and instead of answering it and just leaving it at that, he wants to go on to his narrative. He wants to take the off-ramp onto his safe road and talk about how much fiction is out there. Fiction put out there by the media, by the police, and so on. But he gets interrupted, and it's put to him again that Burke says that he got up that night. And John Ramsey's first words are, well, you know, again. And then he says, when we got home, JonBenet had fallen asleep, right? So, well, when someone answers a question with well, it means I'm going to tell you something. Look, pay attention here. I'm going to tell you why that's a bad question. I'm going to tell you why you need to listen to my answer. Well is a bit of a commanding word, a bit of a controlling word at the start of an answer. It means you're going to be surprised by the answer here. It's not quite in line with the question you asked. I know more than you. I'm going to explain my answer to you. Well, then he says, you know. Now, lots of people use you know as a filler word. You'll hear lots of people talking and going, da da da, you know, and da da da, you know, and da da da. This is not that sort of you know. This is you know. It's a controlling language. It's used a lot by coercive controllers, the phrase you know. So he's telling Ashley, the interviewer, you know this. Okay, you know this, so don't argue with this. So we've got the well and we've got the you know, and then he says again, well, you know, again. Now, again is something that liars use. People who are lying think they need to repeat the lie and think the fact they have repeated the lie makes it more credible. The more often you say it, the more credible it becomes. So he's saying, I've said this before. Again, I've said this before. So this all is very, very concerning. Well, you know, again. This is all about Burke getting up again in the night. When we got home, JonBenet had fallen asleep. The interviewer says, I know, and you and Burke came, and he interrupts. And he says, I put her to bed. Burke and I sat down and tried to put together one of his little toys for a little while just because he wanted to, and then he went off to bed. Now, so many things in this very short answer. First of all, I put her to bed. Now, this is an indication of a truthful line. There's nothing in there that doesn't need to be there. There's nothing in there that's extra or persuading us or convincing us that this is true. It's very factual. It's got all the subjects in it that you need. I, the person, put her, another person, to bed. What happened? It's just a very, very clean sentence. I believe it. I put her to bed. Then Burke and I sat down. Now, when we talk in language about where we are, especially sitting or standing, that can denote tension at the time when we talk about sitting or standing, because there is no need for him to say sat down here. We don't really need to know whether they did it sitting, standing, where they were or anything like that. We just need to know this is what happened. So for him to mention sat down suggests some tension at that point there. Potentially more tension because they didn't put together one of his little toys. They tried to put together one of his little toys. Tried suggests failure there. So they tried to put together one of the little toys, but that suggests to me that the toy was not put together. So we've got this tension and we've got this failure on that night as well. We've got little mentioned twice, one of his little toys for a little while. And in this section, when John is talking about Burke, he's going to say the word little a lot. I don't know why, but he says little a lot. One of his little toys for a little while. And then just because he wanted to. So he's giving us the reason why this happened. Now, why? It's Christmas night. Why do we need a reason for this man to be putting together, playing toys with his son? Just because he wanted to. I've got that word just, which always pings my my radar. Little toys for a little while, just because he wanted to. Really? Is that the only reason? Just makes me think there was other things going on. And then he went off to bed, which is interesting because Burke went off to bed. So Burke put himself to bed there. But in contrast to I put her to bed. There's a difference in age, I get that, but just look at there how the same concept can reveal so much. Burke took himself off to bed, I put her to bed. But I suggest on that night there was there was some tension in what was going on between John and Burke that night. We've got this lack of curiosity. You're saying that whatever Dr. Phil said on the show, he didn't come back down. He says, I wouldn't know if he did come back down. Does stuff like that make you want to be like, oh my gosh, maybe there's something he knows? Burke would have said something if something was weird. It's an insane lack of curiosity. Why are these guys not having that conversation? We have some more uncertainty about whether John thinks that Burke came down or not. He says, I didn't know that he came back down, if he did. So we do have, he came back down, we have, I didn't know, and it's the if he did. For some reason, John does not know what his son Burke did that night for certain, because there's so many ways this is stated uncertainly that he does not know what Burke did that night, and he does not want to find out the answer. Why is that?
In 2016, when everyone started looking at Burke, and that's become like the big story now.
That's absolutely insane. Burke was a 60-pound, 9-year-old little boy. This was a violent assault. It's just, even the police immediately said no. He was interviewed by a child psychologist, which I guess is normal, for 2 days early on, and they said no, absolutely no way. He wasn't aware of anything that happened, and certainly wasn't the killer. And so that's just absurd foolishness.
What was your thinking that morning when you're getting him out of the home? Because I know you guys go to check on him. You think he's still sleeping. He says when he does his Dr. Phil that he's awake, but he's, clearly there's something going on. He's like, I'm not messing with it. I just am like waiting till they come and get me. Mm-hmm. Why did you guys want him to not be in that environment?
Well, the police were there. It was craziness. He was a little boy. We wanted him safe and protected, and he took some of his Christmas presents with him and went to stay with a friend in his house. It was a way to get him out of this nightmare into a safe place.
Did you guys feel like he was safe? I think was it hard? Because I think it would be hard for me to I'm missing one child. Like, I don't know if you could get me to let go of the other one.
Yeah, well, no, we trusted our friends. They were good friends. Their son was Burke's age. They were buddies. They'd been friends for a long time. It was a safe place for him to go. Because
Fleet took him away, but then Fleet comes back, right? Were his in-laws or something at the house? So there was someone there with the kids? 30 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know. It was chaos that morning, and I really thought I could get JonBenet back. I really did.
So it's 2016, everyone starts looking at Burke. That is the question that's put to John Ramsey, and the question is not allowed to finish. He interrupts to take over the narrative. Now, why do we do that? Is it to shut down that line of questioning, or is it because he's got something already planned to say? I mean, this is 28 years he's been telling this story, so is he all ready to go with his pre-prepared version of events, which could be truthful, but he really wants to get in there fast. Whatever happens, he interrupts the question. He has no time for the question. He has more time for saying what it is that he wants to say. We have lots of John Ramsey's themes in this answer, including the word little again. Burke was a 60-pound, 9-year-old little boy. But in John Ramsey's favour, he doesn't downplay what happened to JonBenet, his daughter. Often, when people are guilty of a crime, they'll underplay what happened. Instead of saying, I didn't murder anyone, they'll say, I didn't do it. But he talks about what kind of assault happened to JonBenet. He talks about the violence of the assault as well. And he says that Bert wasn't the killer. So there is really something admirable there, something to look at in his words there and say he's not downplaying what happened. He's not trying to soften the severity at all of what happened to his daughter. That severity softening is something that we would see often from guilty people. We're not seeing it there from John Ramsey. What we are seeing is a lot of ly words, words that end in ly. These are persuasive words used to turn up the severity of what we're saying. So John Ramsey could have said that that's insane, but instead he says that's absolutely insane, as if that makes it more insane, even though it can only be insane or not insane. But he's saying it's absolutely insane. The police didn't just say no, Burke's not involved. They immediately said no. And it's very important for him to use these persuasive words to show us that Burke was not involved in this at all. The police immediately said no. And then in the early days, absolutely no way has he. So again, we've got this absolutely. And certainly he wasn't the killer. Not just he wasn't the killer, but he certainly wasn't the killer. We've also not just got foolishness, it's absurd foolishness. So he's using words, and he's using extra words that are not needed to change the meaning of what he's saying, but to persuade us of this fact. His words are working very hard to persuade us of the fact that Burke should not have been considered a suspect. He talks about the police immediately saying, no way could Burke be involved. The police immediately said no. Now, all the way through this hour-and-a-half interview, John Ramsey has no good words for the police at all. And several police officers that he's come across, and the police in general, no good words for them at all. But he will believe the police when it suits him. He will use what the police say as evidence, I guess, when it suits him. Like there, the police immediately said no. So then he is asked about why on the morning that JonBenet was, when she was missing, did they get Burke out of the house? And his explanation for it is that there was a lot of craziness. We wanted him safe and protected. We wanted him to go with friends. We wanted him to get away from the nightmare. We have the John Ramsey moral of the story. Again, everyone else is bad. We are good. While all these bad things were happening, we were doing good and trying to protect our son. More of the common themes from John Ramsey. We went to stay, or Burke went to stay with a friend in his house, with this repetition, this leaning on friends again, which is something very common for John Ramsey to do. He mentions little again. He was a little boy. We wanted him safe and protected. We have that repetition of the word little. What I'm interested in here in this description was that he says that they got Burke out of the house, and it was when the police were there. The police were there in the house. And yet the police were there. There's rarely a time that your house is more safe and protected than if the police are there looking at the house very, very closely. And lots of police were there as well. So there's very rarely a time your house would be more safe and protected than when the police are there en masse. But for some reason that didn't feel safe to John and Patsy, because they wanted to get him out of this nightmare and into a safe place. So in his words, even though the police were there, they did not consider that the house was a safe place. And he's asked, did you guys feel it was safe? And the interviewer says, like, if that was my child that was missing, I'm not sure that I would let go of another child, let them out of my sight at that moment. And he says, yeah. Now, I don't know what that yeah is to, because it could be two meanings here. It could be yes, we felt he was safe, or it could be an empathetic yeah, I get what you're saying there. Whichever way, it works out quite well. And if it is, it's a yes-no question. Did you guys feel like he was safe? And his first word is yeah. We see that quite a lot from John, that truthful indicator of saying yes or no to a yes-no question. And the reason he felt it was safe, this is this leaning on friends thing again that John's got. We trusted our friends. They were good friends. Their son was Burke's age and they were buddies. They've been friends for a long time. It was a safe place to go. So this repetition of friends in the words of John Ramsey, and leaning on friends as well. And then this is a very curious section. Now, the question is a bit jumbled in the way it was asked, but it was basically, you sent Burke away to these friends, but was there an adult there? Was there someone there with the kids? And John Ramsey's answer is no answer at all. He pauses. You can see his mind whirring while he thinks. What is he doing? Is he thinking, do I tell a lie and just say yes? Or is it that he's thinking, what was happening? It's a long time ago, I can't remember. Or is he thinking, what is the correct thing for me to say in this situation? I don't know, but the fact there was no answer is very telling. He's given an out by the interviewer, sadly, who says it was a long time ago. And he says, yeah, I don't know. We've got that I don't know again. Generally an indication of truthful. Then he says, it was chaos that morning. And again, it's that controlling language. It's not just him saying, you believe me, take me at my word, it was chaos that morning. He's using that controlling language and saying, it was chaos that morning. Don't question this. This is something you know. I'm not telling you this. This is something that you know. Repetition again of chaos. He really wants to get across that morning was chaos. And then one of the most worrying things that John Ramsey says for me, he finishes that answer off by saying, I really thought I could get JonBenet back. I really did. I cannot tell you how many red flags that raises. And it's not the only time he uses those words in that whole hour and a half interview. At least once he says the exact same words again. I really thought I could get JonBenet back. I really did. Now, number one red flag for me is this is completely irrelevant to what he was asked. He was asked, did you feel that, was Burke with adults, basically, when you put him away from the house that morning? And he says, talks about that, but what he isn't asked about is whether he thought he could get JonBenet back or not. He has mentioned it without being asked. It's important for him to say. It's something that he wants to get across, and he's crowbarring it into the answer that he's got here. I really thought I could get JonBenet back. I really did. So that's one red flag about it. It's extra. It's not needed. He hasn't been asked about this whatsoever. And then it's that repetition of the word really. I really thought I could get JonBenet back. I really did. He could say that sentence and it would mean the same thing without the word really. I thought I could get JonBenet back. I did. But no, it's that repetition. I really thought. So not just thought, but I really thought. He's trying to convince us that that is what he was thinking at the time. Why? Why is he trying to convince us that? Why doesn't he just tell us it straight? I thought I could get JonBenet back. But instead, it's this persuasive language, and he wasn't asked about it. And it really, really worries me because there are so many red flags for deception just in that one concept, that one part of the answer. I really thought I could get JonBenet back. I really did. So those are the words of John Ramsey. What are my conclusions after having listened to the full hour and a half of the interview and also digging into what we've looked at in the analysis there? First thing, Burke is John's safe place. He's very comfortable talking about Burke. So comfortable that sometimes when he's asked about Patsy and events of that morning, he moves and talks about Burke instead. Now, why is that? I think it's his safe place. He's very comfortable talking about it, but is that just because he feels comfort in talking about Burke because it doesn't raise any stress? It's something he can talk about naturally. Burke has been his son for a long time now. So is it something that he just feels comfortable talking about? Or is there a sense of creating safety and protection for Burke? Because that's in a lot of what he says, making Burke feel safe and protected is a theme of John Ramsey's. So does he talk about Burke a lot to provide safety for him and to provide protection for him? But certainly talking about Burke is something that is a safe place for John. He likes to do it. I know you're all screaming about theories. You want to know, do I think, is John the killer? Did John kill his daughter, JonBenet Ramsey? I can't see anything in his words that suggest that. Can't see anything in his words that suggest the guilty knowledge, hiding the fact he is a killer, covering his tracks, skipping over anything that he did that night. I can't see anything in John Ramsey's words that would suggest that to me that he killed his daughter. However, when he's talking, I see deceptive indicators when he talks about that night and when he talks about the next day. I thought I'd get her back. I really did. When he talks about the tension that night, or doesn't talk about the tension that night. When he talks about that night, there is some tension, even though, as he's telling the story, JonBenet's in bed and he's playing toys on Christmas night with his son. I see tension and I see failure there. I see avoidance from him talking too much about that night as well. He doesn't want to do it So I see deceptive indicators when he talks about that night. He's got a personal issue with the police, and the issue with the police is not that they haven't found the killer of his daughter. It's not that they're not investigating to try and find who is the killer of his daughter. His issue with the police is that the police suspected him, and the police suspected his wife, Patsy, at times of murdering the daughter. That is a personal issue with the police. He really doesn't have a hard time with the fact that they haven't found the killer. The big thing for me, though, is he shows no curiosity about what happened. He says he never asked Burke to give him any extra details or say, Burke, is there something we don't know? Is there anything you can say that might help us? He says he's never asked those questions. Even when he saw Dr. Phil, and he saw Burke say things that he'd never heard of before, he didn't ask any further questions. And listen, when he says he didn't ask those further questions, the language there is very truthful. So I suggest that he did not ask Burke, and he has not asked Burke these deeper, further questions. Why is that? Why is that? Why is that? Why throughout that hour and a half interview does he show no curiosity about what happened to his daughter that night? No curiosity whatsoever. Well, there's one reason for that. In my opinion, he knows way more about what happened that night in his house than he has ever said. Possibly that involves a member of his family. I do wonder if friends are involved as well, because he talks about friends a lot. And that leaning on friends thing. Whatever it is, in my opinion, from looking only at the words of John Ramsey, I think he knows way more about what happened to his daughter than he has ever said publicly. So much renewed interest in the JonBenet Ramsey case. So I'm going to go and uncover the secrets revealed in the first interview that the parents, John and Patsy, gave just days after JonBenet was found killed. The story was that JonBenet was discovered on the 26th of December. Since that time, John and Patsy have left Boulder, where they were living. They've lawyered up, and they gave a television interview on the 1st of January 97, so just days after JonBenet was killed. Many people thought they should have been talking to law enforcement rather than TV at the time that this happened. Now, I love first interviews. They can be so revealing as to what happened. Because why? Well, number one, they're unpolished. So if we dig into what's going on, we're bound to see the most raw answers that we'll get, because they're unpracticed. They haven't had time. If they are making up a story, they haven't had time to cross all the T's, dot all the I's in that story. So this should be very revealing when we look at the words that they choose to use. For the same reason, they're prone to slips. When they talk, they might let something out that they don't mean to let out, that in later interviews they might keep inside. And also, if they are again making up stories or have got some sort of cover story going on, then they might not have covered all the bases in their planning. So when they're asked an unexpected question, something might slip out there as well. So it's a first interview. What is it that I want you to look at? Well, look for storytelling. Are they answering questions authentically and just saying what they experienced, what the events were? Or are they storytelling and going into telling us a much grander version of what happened, or even a deceptive version of what happened? That could be present in this first interview. Look for uncertainty, because if they haven't practiced the story, lying is really hard. Just making up a lie is very, very hard. So if they are being deceptive, then there might be some uncertainty when they're talking. The other thing to look for is contradictions. Does everything match up, or do they contradict themselves in this interview? Because it's unpolished, it's unprepared, then they may let out some contradictions. Two other things to warn you of. Number one, Patsy is under the influence of something. Take a look at this.
I don't know who it is. I don't know if it's a he or a she. But if I were a resident of Boulder, I will tell my friends to keep your babies close to you. There's someone out there.
Yeah, logic would say she's heavily sedated, given the traumatic events that she has experienced. Could be alcohol involved in there as well, but we're going to treat what Patsy says, bearing that in mind. The other thing is that this interview does not exist in full anywhere. So I've pieced it together the best I can, looking at clips, looking at transcripts of the interview, looking what was reported at the time, to try and put together the interview as well as I could. Are we ready? Let's dig in to that first interview. So the interviewer asks, why did you decide you wanted to talk now? And John answers first and says, well, we have been pretty isolated, totally isolated for the last 5 days, but we've sensed from our friends that this tragedy has touched not just ourselves and our friends, but many people. And we know that there's many people that are praying for us, that are grieving with us, and we want to thank them, to let them know that we are healing, and that we know in our hearts JonBenet is safe and with God, and that the grieving that we all have to do is for ourselves and for our loss. But we want to thank those people that care about us. Interesting answer. So he's asked, why did you decide you wanted to talk now? John's first word is well. I'll always advise you, look out for people who begin an answer to a question with well. It means I'm going to tell you something unexpected. I'm going to explain something to you. I'm not really taking your question on and answering it straightforward. I'm flagging up here that I'm going to tell you maybe why that's a bad question, or maybe why my answer knows more than your question. So he flags it up with well. And he says, we have been pretty isolated, and then corrects himself, if you like, and says totally isolated. Now, which one is it? Because pretty isolated means kind of isolated, sort of isolated, not 100% isolated. Pretty is a qualified word. And then he corrects it and says totally isolated. So for me, I think what he wanted to get across was we have been totally isolated, but the truth comes out in our words. So he says pretty isolated, and you would be pretty isolated in that experience that they've just had, but he wants to convince us that they have been totally isolated. So he says pretty isolated and then corrects that to totally isolated. What I think has gone on there, when someone corrects themselves, I tend to always think, let's look at the first thing they say first. That's probably the thing that's coming from their brain. The genuine, authentic thing is pretty isolated, and then he's aware enough to go, no, that's not strong enough. That's not what I want to get across. I want to say we have been totally isolated. He carries on and says, but we've sensed from our friends that this tragedy has touched not just ourselves and our friends, but many people. And we know there's many people that are praying for us, that are grieving with us. Now, this is really the first thing of any meat that he has said here. The first thing we say tends to give away our priorities, the things that it is that we want to say. Now, our priorities aren't always true. They aren't always our authentic experience. It's the thing that's most important for us to say. So why have they gone into this interview? It's to get some sort of message across, and this is the thing that he wants to say. We've sensed from our friends that we're not in this alone, that other people are out there, that we're not alone, that people are on our side. Other people are on our side. And he brings that in massively. So the friends have told them this. So we've got friends, okay? Our friends are on our side, and they're telling us that there's many people praying for us, grieving with us. And to those people who are on our side, we want to thank them because we're nice people. We want to let them know we're healing, that JonBenet is safe and with God, and that we have to do some grieving for ourselves and for our loss. But we want to thank those people that care about us. So this really, for me, is about image management. Very strange place to be in when your daughter has been killed, 5-6 days previously, to be in image management. The image that people you would expect to have is as victims, yeah? So their daughter has been killed. They found their daughter dead inside their house in bizarre circumstances. And instead of them thinking that everyone is seeing them as victims of a tragedy and of a perpetrator, what they're wanting to do here is image manage something. Do they think that people think they are guilty? Do they think this is not a good look? Is that their priority? Why their priority is image management, to just control what it is that people think about them and what it is people are saying about them. It's an age-old concept that if you want to show people that they should be on your side, that they should be buying your product, or they should be believing what you say many other people, your peers, think that I'm a nice person or I've got a good product for sale. We see it all the time in advertising, and what they are wanting to do here, or what John is wanting to do here, is say many people believe us, many people are on our side, many people feel sorry for us. Everyone should feel the same, because if you don't feel the same as everyone else, is there something a bit strange about you? I noticed in John's first answer here, he's talking in joint pronouns all the time. He doesn't talk about himself, but he always talks about we. I'm presuming that's him and Patsy. We have been pretty isolated. We've sensed from our friends. That's touched not just ourselves and our friends, but many people. We know there's many people that are praying for us. All these joint words coming out, they are grieving with us, and we want to thank them, and we are healing. We know in our hearts that JonBenet is safe. That we all have to do is for ourselves and for our loss. We want to thank people that care about us. So they're very much showing a united front here. Now, our pronouns is something that we don't think a lot about when we say. So what I think is going on here is there is this unity between him and Patsy coming through here. He feels able to talk on behalf of the pair of them. John says, we've sensed from our friends that this tragedy has touched not just ourselves and our friends, but many people. Now, that's a word, sensed, so that implies that they haven't said, this is exactly what's going on. They haven't said, look, this is touched not just ourselves, but many people. It's just a sense that they've got. So it's maybe not been, in his words here, it's maybe not been explicit in what they've said. But then he goes on to say, we know there are many people that are praying for us. So he's got a bit of a contradiction there. Does he know these things are happening? Has he had conversations with friends about how the outside world is relying on? Or is this not authentic? Is this something that he's decided, again, in this image management thing, to say, that I've got a sense that some people are on our side, but what I'm now going to say is I know many people are playing for us. But these two things don't quite hang together. One is a sense, which is a feeling, which is a thought that something could be true, and one is knowing, which is a fact. We'll see just how much they join themselves up into other people, which is very strange, because he starts off by saying, again, we've been isolated. We've been either pretty isolated or totally isolated. But the word isolation there is very prominent in the first thing that he says. So isolation, being apart from everyone. But then within that isolation, he's talking about his friends and the sense that he's got from interacting with his friends, and the fact that his friends have been impacted by this tragedy, but also the many people that have been impacted as well, and the many people that are praying for them. And he wants to thank those people that care about us. Very interesting there. He does say, and he starts off by saying, been feeling isolated, but then he gives away signs that they're not so isolated with all these friends and these many people on their side. And he also adds in one last thing: JonBenet is safe and with God. Now, I'm not knocking religion, and I'm also not saying that these were not religious people. However, it's a very common thing when you want to get people on your side to invoke God, to talk about God being on your side, to talk about being God-fearing, because the idea is that if I talk about something holy and sacred like God, well, no, I can't be lying, because people would not lie when they talk about God, would they? They would not invoke God in a false way, because that would be a terrible thing to do if you're a believer in God. It also helps get people who believe in God's on your side if you start talking about the God that you share there. So this first thing that John said is pure image management, is pure about getting the public on their side. So why did you decide you wanted to talk right now was the question. I think the answer is because people are not on our side in general, and we want to get people on our side. It's very important to us. Now, even though that's a conclusion I can reach, that doesn't mean these guys are guilty. It means they want to change the narrative. They want to change the suspicion that they are being seen under. This is just days after JonBenet's death. Once John has said all that, Patsy comes in and says, we have just been overwhelmed by the cards and letters and visits, and people we haven't seen for years have come to call and be supportive in there. Many of them are parents, and they know and can feel our grief. So she starts off by saying, we have been overwhelmed by the cards and letters and visits, and people we haven't seen for years have come to call and be supportive. That's very at odds with John's, we have been pretty isolated, totally isolated. This is not isolation at all. So look, she does follow on from John in terms of saying that people are on our side. So she's sticking to the narrative, if you like, that they're setting there for them. But it is contradictory. She's saying we've been overwhelmed by cards and letters, and John has been saying we've been feeling pretty isolated. So this is inauthentic. There's something there that doesn't hang together. The two things can't be true. They can either have been overwhelmed by the cards and letters and visits from people, or they can be feeling isolated. It's inauthentic. We don't know what the truth is, but one of them in all of this is not telling the truth. But the message is just there from Patsy and from John. Lots of people are on our side. Why do they feel the need to say that? Because they realise lots of people are not on their side. John continues with the answer. But the other reason is that for our grief to resolve itself, we now have to find out why this happened. John mentions grief here. For our grief to resolve itself, we now have to find out why this happened. Now, in that very first answer, this is the third mention of grief between John and Patsy. So I do believe grief is there. They do have grief that their daughter is dead. This word has just slipped out in a very straightforward way. They're not talking about tremendous grief or trying to over-persuade us how much grief they have. It's just been 3 mentions that are straightforward grief mentions. So I do believe there is grief there. John starts this answer with the word but. He says, but the other reason is that for our grief to resolve itself, we now have to find out what this happens. Now, it starts with but. Have you ever heard the phrase, everything after the but, everything before the but is bull? It's not quite true. Everything before the but is less important than everything that comes after the but. Someone can say something they believe, but when they say but, that thing is more important to them. So this is more important to John. The other reason for our grief to resolve itself, we have to find out why this happened. Now, that could be quite reassuring. So what we've got in the concept here is that they're asked why they did the interview. He does a lot of image management to show that people are on our side. And really, what we want is to show people that lots of people are on our side, and we want to just calm down this suspicion that we are under. But more important, we want to find out why this has happened. That's all logical and understandable. But what interests me is John says we have to find out why this happened. So what interests John, in his own words, is why JonBenet was killed. Not who killed JonBenet. What's important to him is why JonBenet was killed. The interview continues, and they are asked, there has been some question as to why you hired a defence attorney. And John says, I know. Well, we were fortunate from almost the moment that we found the note to be surrounded by friends, our minister, our family doctor, a personal friend of mine who is also an attorney, and we relied on their guidance almost from that moment on. And my friend suggested that it would be foolish not to have knowledgeable counsel to help both us and with the investigation. So once again, we have John surrounded by people, so not isolated again, because he said he's been surrounded by friends, our minister, a family doctor, a personal friend who's also an attorney. Lots of good people have been around him, so he really wants to get across this image that the Ramseys are good people. They have friends. Their minister has been in touch. The family doctor, I mean, who's more trustworthy than the family doctor and the friend who is the attorney? But, and this is something I've seen with John to this very day, it's very much a feeling of not my fault. What I've done, if anyone's got questions about what's happened, has been not my fault. I've taken the advice of other people. It wasn't me that decided to do any of this. It wasn't Patsy that decided to do any of this. It's been other people in our circle that have given this guidance of things we can do. Now, this guy was a successful, very rich businessman. You do not get there without taking responsibility, without taking action, without having some strength of character. And yet what he wants to tell us here is that the fact that they hired defence attorneys was not his fault. It was the advice, the guidance of other people, and what wonderful people they are as well, including the minister and the family doctor. He does continue with his joint pronouns. We were fortunate from the moment we found the note, surrounded by friends, our minister, our family doctor. We relied on their guidance, and this was going to help both of us. So he's still talking about the pair of them. Apart from one thing, this attorney is not friends. He's a personal friend of mine. That implies it's someone that Patsy has no connection with whatsoever, because this attorney has nothing to do with Patsy. Patsy's joined into the minister. It's our minister, our family doctor. In fact, that could be wider than John and Patsy. That could be the entire family. But this attorney is a personal friend of mine. And almost from that moment on, my friend suggested it would be foolish for us not to have knowledgeable counsel. So John is actually belying something here, that this person who has advised them to hire defence attorneys has nothing to do with the rest of the family. It was a personal friend of mine. Very interesting there. The question that was asked was, there has been some question as to why you hired a defence attorney. Now, John does answer the question, but only after all this image management thing about how many friends he's got, how many trustworthy, good, virtuous people he has on his side, like the minister and the family doctor. Because once he's told us all that, he then says, it would be foolish not to have knowledgeable counsel to help both us and with the investigation. So he could have covered that off without any of this image management. There has been some question as to why you hired a defence attorney. He could have said, it would be foolish not to have knowledgeable counsel to help both us and with the investigation. That would be straightforward and direct. But there's all this filler in between, the image management stuff. Image management, just 5-6 days after JonBenet was found dead, is incredibly important to John. And really, what is the answer to that question? It would be foolish not to have knowledgeable counsel to help us. What does that mean? Help you what? He doesn't explain. He does not explain what help it is that they need. So he's hiding that, concealing that. He's certainly not revealing to us what sort of help they need from this knowledgeable counsel. It could be that they realise by this point that the police are suspecting them or digging into them a little bit, and that is the help that they need. And he realises with his image management head on that talking about that is not a good thing, so he wants to take that out the conversation and just say to help us. Interesting, if we look at the ordering that's come here, he mentions that the counsel, the defence attorney, was to help us and with the investigation. So first thing he mentions, the priority, the most important thing to him is given away in the way that the way that he lists things and the number that he orders things in. The most important thing in having this, the defence attorney, was to help us, and then secondly was to help with the investigation. So the defence attorneys aren't there to help with the investigation as much as help John and Patsy Ramsey. After John has said that, Patsy pipes up. And if anyone knows anything, please help us. For the safety of all the children, we have to find out who did this. Now that is irrelevant to the question. It was, why have you hired defence attorneys? And Patsy's saying, if anyone knows anything, please help us. For the safety of all the children, we have to find out who did this. Completely and utterly irrelevant to the question, unless in someone's head they hired defence attorneys, and once more it's looking slightly suspicious for the Ramseys, because the thought is that hiring defence attorneys actually hinders the investigation. It's not full cooperation, it's not frank cooperation. There is a layer of protection for the Ramseys now. Now that might be why she wants to convince us that if anyone knows anything, please help us. For the safety of all the children, we have to find out who did this. She joins herself into the outside world again. She doesn't want to find out who did this so that they can have their grief resolved, which is what John said earlier. She wants this, in fact, to be for the safety of all the children. Yeah, all the children. We have to find out who did this. I don't quite buy that. I think there's probably a more selfish reason why she wants to know that. She's out of step with John here entirely, because we have to find out who did this, is what Patsy says. Remember, John said that we want to find out why this happened. Well, Patsy says we have to find out who did this. Interesting. John wants to know why. Patsy wants to know who. John comes in again and he says, not because we're angry, but because we have got to go on. Patsy starts saying, we can't. John picks up again. We cannot go on until we know why. There's no answer as to why our daughter died. Now, John says, not because we're angry. And his focus there is on the being angry. It's a statement in the negative, not because we're angry. What he's actually saying there is, we're angry. He doesn't say why, but he does say that he's angry, which is interesting. What is it that he's angry about? Because I would be reassured if he's angry that his daughter has been killed, savagely murdered. And it could be that. Is it that we're angry because we're under suspicion? That's why we've hired defence attorneys. I don't know. But what John is saying there is, we are angry. He then uses the phrase go on twice. We have got to go on, and this cannot go on until we know why. Interesting repetition. I want to know what it is go on means to him. Is it just proceed with his life? Potentially. And we can see here again is that John is talking about why, not who. He says this, we cannot go on until we know why. There's no answer as to why our daughter died. Not who killed her, which is what Patsy said. John, very interested in the why. But you can see, once more, John talking for the pair of them. We are angry. We have got to go on. We can't, says Patsy. So she's talking for the pair of them as well. And John says, we cannot go on until we know why. There's no answer as to why our daughter died. So the pair of them are together. Although they're saying some slightly different things, the pair of them do feel together. The next question the interviewer asks is, when you return to Boulder, you will sit down with the Boulder police? John says, oh, absolutely, absolutely. We want them to know everything possible that could help them. And it's not said everything possible that could help them. When he says it, he says, we want them to know everything possible that could help them. And Patsy says, everything. And she says it, everything, like one word. Everything, whatever they want, whatever anyone wants, we will cooperate. So John's answer to, will you sit down with Boulder police is, oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Regular viewers will know that absolutely is a word that gets my deception detection going quite a lot. Look, I'm not saying when someone says the word absolutely, they are lying. It just appears in deception so often. And he repeats it twice. He doesn't just say yes. Yes, we'll cooperate with the police. He just says absolutely. Absolutely. So will he? I would, just on the basis of that, would not put any faith whatsoever that he's going to sit down with Boulder police when he returns there, because those two absolutelys make me think, I'm not so sure. He carries on. We want them to know everything possible that could help them. Now that sounds great, doesn't it? We want them to know everything possible that could help them. But just break down this sentence. It's not we're going to tell them everything that can help them. It's just we want them to know everything possible that could help them. And it's only the things that could help them that they want them to know. They don't want them to know everything. So implicit within that is, are there some things that they want to hold back on that they feel would not help the police? It's a very interestingly worded sentence. We want them to know everything possible that could help them. It's not an absolute guarantee of cooperation. It's not volunteering all the information that could help. It's just a wish. We want them to know everything possible, and it's a qualified wish that could help them. Patsy goes further, and this could be the medication that she is on. Everything, whatever they want, whatever anyone wants, we will cooperate. So Patsy's going to absolutes here. So again, when someone goes to absolutes, I always doubt they're telling the truth. And we will cooperate is how she finishes that. We will cooperate. That should be unsaid. If your daughter has been murdered, you don't need to tell us you're going to cooperate with the police. You just cooperate with the police. It should be unsaid, but for some reason, Patsy feels the need to tell us that they are going to cooperate. The interview continues with, are you fully convinced that your daughter was kidnapped by some outsiders outside your family or circle of friends? John says, yes, we don't, it's just so hard to know, but our family is a loving family. It's a gentle family. We have lost one child. We know how precious their lives are. John's first word in that answer is yes. So it's a yes or no question. It's a question that can either be answered with a yes, a no, or a don't know. Are you fully convinced that your daughter was kidnapped by some outsiders outside your family or circle of friends? And John's first word is yes. Generally, an indication of truthfulness. So there we would say, yeah, John is fully convinced your daughter was kidnapped by someone outside the family or circle of friends. But let's dig into that answer a little bit more. He says yes. Could have left it at that, but instead he says a little bit more. He says, we don't, it's just so hard to know, but our family is a loving family. It's a gentle family. We have lost one child. We know how precious their lives are. That's a little bit of a resume statement. Once again, image management at the heart of what John says, telling us how great his family is. It's a loving family. It's a gentle family. We know how precious their lives are. But the question was asked about, who is the identity of the killer? Do you know, or do you have any ideas? And instead of going and expanding on that, he tells us what a great family he has. It is a detour. He has been asked a question about the identity of the killers, and he's gone on a detour and spoke about how great his family is. John says, yes, and then he says, I. And that's, I think, maybe the first time we've heard John say an I in this interview, but he doesn't hold on to that I. He corrects himself and says, we don't. Now, that interests me. Why was he going to talk for himself, but then corrected to talk for the pair of them there? Is this something that only he knows? Are they as together as they seem? Because he seemed to be going to talk for himself, very much like when he spoke about his personal friend. And then he goes to join it up to the we don't. You'll notice the question was asked, are you fully convinced that your daughter was kidnapped by some outsiders outside your family or circle of friends? And the answer that came back is about the family. Our family is a loving family. It's a gentle family. These are not quite direct rebuffals that my family was not involved, but he does talk about what a great family he has. But notice, in that answer, friends are not mentioned. He's asked, are you fully convinced that your daughter was kidnapped by people outside your family or circle of friends? He says what a great family he's got. He doesn't mention friends at all. Why is that? We're going to see soon how Patsy describes finding the infamous ransom note. It's a fascinating answer to the question that she was asked. If you do like the JonBenet Ramsey case, if it does interest you, you'll find a lot more content here on this channel, including a breakdown of that ransom note, who wrote the ransom note, and also the 911 call that Patsy Ramsey made. What is it in the words of the ransom note? What is it in the words of the 911 call that we can learn more about what happened to JonBenet Ramsey? You will find those here on this channel. If you do like this, if you're getting something from it, the like button goes a long way to helping share this with other people that are interested in the JonBenet Ramsey case. If you want more episodes like this, if you hit the subscribe or follow buttons, you will get them when they are released. If you want a little bit more, then why not consider becoming a member of the channel on YouTube or a subscriber on Spotify? That means that you can get episodes like this before anyone else and exclusive bonus episodes too. For example, there are some parts of this interview that I don't have time to put in this episode, so I'm going to do a members only one, digging into some more of the answers that John and Patsy Ramsey gave in this very first interview. Let's carry on with that interview then. The next question that's asked is, Mrs. Ramsey, you found the note. Was it a handwritten note? 3 pages. And here's Patsy's answer, and it's a long one. Patsy says, I didn't. I couldn't read the whole thing. I'd just gotten up. We were on it was the day before Christmas, and we were going to go visiting, and it was quite early in the morning, and I had got dressed and was on my way to the kitchen to make some coffee. And we have a back staircase from the bedroom areas, and I always come down that staircase, and I am usually the first one down. And the note was lying across the 3 pages, across the run of one of the stair treads, and it was kind of dimly lit. It was just very early in the morning, and I started to read it, and it was addressed to John. It said, Mr. Ramsey, and it said, we have your daughter. And it just wasn't registering, and I may have gotten through another sentence. We have your daughter, and I don't know if I got any further than that. And I immediately ran back upstairs and pushed open her door, and she was not in her bed, and I screamed for John. It's a very, very long answer for quite a simple question, which was, Mrs. Ramsey, you found the note. Was it a handwritten note? 3 pages. She could have answered very simply by saying, yeah, it was a handwritten note, 3 pages long. Instead, we got that very long answer. Only once does she deal with the question in the middle of it. She says 3 pages, right in the middle of something that she's talking about. She says, and the note was lying across the 3 pages across the run of one of the stair treads, and it was kind of dimly lit. You'll notice she avoids talking about the handwriting at all. She was asked, was it a handwritten note? And she doesn't say that the note was handwritten. Why not? And this is a very, very long answer, and it's telling a story. Why does she want to tell a story when she has been asked a very simple question that could be answered very simply? It was 3 pages long and it was handwritten. Does she tell the whole story about finding it? One of the things could be, if we've got a story ready to roll, if we've got something that is really important for us to say, whether that is true or whether that is deceptive, we will fit it in to answer a question because we've prepared for this. We've got this ready to say, and I'm going to use what I've prepared. Rather than just answering the questions, I'm going to come out and tell my story. And this is such a story. It's scene setting. There's some jumps in time in it. There's some really interesting things that are there. It could be that this is a very traumatic event for her, and a lot of this waffle that is there, because quite frankly, most of this is irrelevant waffle, is to delay getting to that horrible part where she found the note and found JonBenet was not in bed. And it could be that. But there's a lot of scene setting in this that I think means it's something different. Let's start with the tenses. Quite often when someone is making up a story, they will slip between past and present tense because they're making up the story in their mind as they speak. They're experiencing it from a different part of their brain than where things that happen to us are stored. And so sometimes when we're doing that, we will slip into present tense. But listen, Patsy never does that there. There's lots of past tense in there. It's reliably all in past tense. I couldn't read the whole thing. It was the day after Christmas. We were going to go visiting. It was quite early in the morning. I had got dressed, was on my way to the kitchen. The note was lying across the stair treads. It was kind of dimly lit. It was very early in the morning. It was addressed to John. I pushed open her door. She was not in bed. I screamed for John. The tenses there are very good. There's nothing there that is worrying me because it's in the present tense. And if you look at her pronouns as well, because this has all been joint pronouns from them so far, but really everything here pronoun wise is absolutely fine from Patsy too. She talks about her and what she experienced at the time. She was on her own. I couldn't read the whole thing. I had just gotten up. I had got dressed. I started to read it. I may have gotten through another sentence. I don't know if I got any further than that. I ran back upstairs. I screamed for John. She is reliably only talking for herself, apart from when it's appropriate. We were going to go visiting. We have a back staircase. So her tenses are really good and her pronouns are really good as well, apart from one. While she talks about herself a lot, I couldn't read the whole thing. I had just gotten up. I had got dressed. That whole sentence is, I had got dressed and was on my way to the kitchen to make some coffee. And there's a missing I there. It could have been, I had got dressed and I was on my way to the kitchen to make some coffee. So was she really on her way to make some coffee? Sometimes we drop pronouns, but she's reliably used her own pronoun I so often there that it's very noticeable that one is dropped there when she talks about being on the way to the kitchen to make some coffee. Some other things that I notice in this kind of rambling answer there. She says, I didn't. And then she restarts, I couldn't read the whole thing. So we've got one of these restarts, a restating of the thought, really. And again, I tend to go with what's at the beginning. I didn't read the whole thing, or I couldn't read the whole thing. They're two very different things. Which one is true? I would go with the first one. She said she didn't read the whole thing, not that she couldn't read the whole thing. She uses the word just, very much like absolutely, a word that gets my interest. I just gotten up. Now, why in all of this does she feel the need to tell us that she just gotten up? One of the possibilities that she feels the need to tell us this quite irrelevant thing in the whole story is that she hadn't gotten up. Part of her story is that she had just gotten up. She hasn't been awake any earlier. She hasn't been awake all through the night or anything like that. She wants us to know, and she mentions it specifically, that I just gotten up. I do not know what we were going to go visiting means. It's, again, it might be the sedation, but she could just say we were going visiting and we were heading out for the day, but we were going to go visiting is a curious way of wording things. She says, we have a back staircase from the bedroom areas and I always come down that staircase. I always come down that staircase. Why does she feel the need to tell us which staircase she uses every single morning? Don't know. But she wants us to know that where that note was Well, seems to be that it was left specifically because it was left by someone who knows she always comes down that staircase. That would be what I am getting from those words. There's no need to tell us which staircase you always come down in the morning. What we're really interested in is the staircase that you came down that morning. And she doesn't say that's the one she used. She just says, I always come down that staircase. So instead of talking about that day, that horrific day when she went down the staircase and there was a ransom note saying her daughter had been taken, she just talks in general. I always come down that staircase. And it's the same with when she says, I am usually the first one down. She doesn't say she was the first one down that morning, just that she is usually the first one down. So I'm getting some red flags around this story that perhaps all is not quite what it seems. Patsy wants to tell us it was quite early in the morning. She says it twice. It was quite early in the morning, and it was just very early in the morning, and I started to read it. Was it early in the morning? Was it late at night? Was it as early as you make it out to be? We don't know, but for some reason she wants to tell us that she has a sense of the time that this happened. Put that in with I'm the first one up as well. And then there's some uncertainty in her words in this bit here. It just wasn't registering. I may have gotten through another sentence. I can't, but we have got your daughter, and I don't know if I got any further than that. Real uncertainty there around the note, around how much of that note she read. She wants to tell us that she did not read all the note. It's very important for her to tell us that she did not read all that note. Why is that? And this last part of the story, and I immediately ran back upstairs and pushed open her door, and she was not in her bed, and I screamed for John. This is like a script of directions. You'll notice it's all action, no emotion. There's no feeling put into this whatsoever. I immediately ran back upstairs and pushed open her door, and she was not in bed, and I screamed for John. It's action, 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 action. No thought process and no emotion expressed there whatsoever. But Patsy talking about that ransom note is the first thing that made me go, what is going on here? Because the rest of this I can make a lot of sense of. The image management doesn't mean they're guilty. It means they know what people are saying about them, and it's important for them to manage that and try and change that narrative. But around this ransom note and that story of finding the ransom note, I'm finding a whole load of red flags. The next question is, John, you subsequently read the note. Was there anything in there that struck you in any sense? And John says, well, no. I mean, I read it very fast. I was out of my mind. And it said, don't call the police. You know, that type of thing. And I told Patsy, call the police immediately. And I think I ran through the house a bit. So John starts with well again. He does his well, which is, I'm not really going to answer your question. I'm going to tell you why it's a bad question, why my answer is better than your question. Well, but he does say no straight away again. So was there anything there that struck you in any sense? And he says, no. That's his answer. Again, very much like Patsy, there's a bit of a partness now. He's talking about himself. I mean, I read it very fast. None of this we there anymore. I was out of my mind. No, we were out of our mind. I was out of my mind. I told Patsy to call the police immediately, and I think I ran through the house a bit. So John, very much like Patsy at this point, is talking about himself and his reactions. They're not talking as a couple anymore. He says, I told Patsy, call the police immediately. So we've got a bit of commanding, ordering language there, controlling language. I told Patsy, call the police immediately. Why could he not call the police immediately? Why was it he told Patsy to call the police immediately? And also, I told Patsy, call the police immediately. Sounds great, but doesn't say that they did call the police immediately. It's not Patsy called the police immediately. It's I told Patsy call the police immediately. And we've got this word immediately in there as well. Call the police immediately. Why not just call the police? Why are we called the police? Why do they need to tell us how quickly they did it with this word immediately? Because you'll notice this is not the first time we've seen immediately around this ransom note. Patsy said, I immediately ran back upstairs. Did they do these things immediately? Did this all play out over a longer period of time? Is that why they feel the need to tell us these things happened immediately? It could be. And then once more, we've got a bit of uncertainty in this story. John saying, I think I ran through the house a bit. So he thinks he did. Not very sure. He might not have. That's what I think means. And a bit. Ran through the house a bit. So he thinks he did something, but not very much of something. Why is that important for him to say? These guys, they do quote the ransom note, but they only quote 3 parts of it when they talk about it. I don't know, maybe at this point the ransom note was not public. I don't know when the ransom note was made public. It could be law enforcement have said to them, do not divulge the contents of the ransom note right now. It's very important to us. But they are very limited on quoting of the note. John mentions, don't call the police. Patsy mentions that it was addressed to just Mr. Ramsey, and also the fact we've got your daughter, but they're very limited in quoting of the notes. Certainly none of the nutty stuff that was there around sex, around strange bags, around resting up. None of that is mentioned by these guys in this interview at all. The question is asked, was there anything in there that struck you in any sense about the ransom note? John says no, and once again then we have all that filler after it. I mean, I read it very fast, I was out of my mind, and it said don't call the police, that type of thing. I told Patsy, call the police immediately, and I think I ran through the house a bit. What do you notice there? It's another detour. Was there anything there that struck you in any sense about the ransom note? And John talks about their reaction, not about the note. He wants us to know that they called the police immediately, and he wants us to know that he ran through the house a bit, although it's not very convincing language. So from all of this, I don't think the ransom note was found like they are saying in this interview. I think there was some time taken, certainly between finding the ransom note, reading the ransom note, well, whatever it was, and calling the police. Basically, between knowing their daughter, something had happened to their daughter, and calling the police, I don't think was as immediate as John and Patsy claim it is in this interview and in subsequent interviews as well. The next thing Patsy says is, we went to check our son. And John says, checked our son's room. Sometimes she sleeps in there, and we just were... Patsy says, we were frantic. So Patsy says, we went to check our son. Perfectly normal thing to do if you find a ransom note saying we have your daughter and you got a son in the house as well, and you know your daughter's gone, you go and check your son. So Patsy says, we went to check our son. And John says, we checked our son's room. Sometimes she sleeps in there. So Patsy went to check the son. Fair enough. John says, checked our son's room, which is a very different thing. He didn't check his son. He checked the room to see if JonBenet was in there. 2 very different things. So we're seeing, again, although these guys are using lots of we and ours pronouns, when we actually dig into it, there are some real differences there. Patsy saying we went to check on Burke, and John saying, no, we didn't. We checked Burke's room. The next question they are asked is, you were asked shortly thereafter for a hair sample and a writing sample, blood sample. Who else was asked for this? And John says, well, yeah, his well is there again. Patsy and I, Burke, our son, who is 9, every family member. He's asked, including your 2 elder children? He says, uh-huh. Any friends? John says, I don't know. Now, this all seems really straightforward to me. Things I'm not quite happy with there are the rather than yes. That seems a little bit less committed than the yes, but it is still an affirmative answer. I don't know is in there as well. When John's asked about, have your friends been asked to do this? And he says, I don't know. I don't know is generally a reliable indicator that someone is telling us the truth. Truthful people have no problem saying, I don't know. People who are telling a lie, they think that saying, I don't know shows weakness in their story, so they have to know, they have to put some things in there. But this generally seems very straightforward. They're asked, did you give the samples? And John says, uh-huh. And he's asked, oh, really? Because the word was they thought you were too grief-stricken, so both of you gave samples? And John says, yes. So we've got that aha there, and then we've got yes. And look, did they give samples? I don't know the absolute ins and outs and timelines of the JonBenet Ramsey story. So did they give those samples? Because John's aha there again is that sort of slangy, less committed than yes. And then both of you gave samples, and he says yes. He doesn't expand on that at all by saying yes, we gave samples. Yeah, we gave them everything they wanted. He just says the word yes. So let me know in the comments or in social media. All the links are in the show description if you want to get in touch on social media. Had they given samples at the time of this? Because I think in the wording there, I'm not sure they had given full samples. The interviewer says, were you offended by that? John says no. And Patsy goes off piste a little bit and says something different. She says it was difficult, but they need to know. I mean, our handprints are all over the home, so they need to know if there are other ones. So John's more direct there. He's asked, were you offended by that? He says no. Patsy says, it was difficult, but I could see the reasons why they're doing it. So John, that very curt no, closes the whole thing off. He doesn't feel the need to expand. He doesn't feel the need to detour either, though. And Patsy does have a little bit of that detour there by explaining why the handprints are important, because there may be ones all over the house. However, Patsy mentions the handprints. They were not asked about handprints at all. The question was hair samples, writing samples, blood samples. So again, did they provide everything that was needed at that time, or did they give some kind of prints, handprints, fingerprints? Because they were asked about hair samples, writing samples, blood samples, and Patsy only deals with handprints. What I do know is there's some doubt in Patsy. She's open to the fact that there could be other handprints there that are important, because she says if there are other ones. So she is open to the fact that there could be other handprints in the house. And then we get this from John. One of the things they told us, we had some initial reactions as to who might have been involved, and they said, well, that is good, but we don't want to draw the focus in tight yet. We've got to look at everything. Not a very eloquent answer from John there, but there are some really interesting things in his answer. He says, we had some initial reactions as to who might have been involved. Reactions is interesting, not thoughts, not ideas. Something that you react to is an instinctive thing, and instincts are good. And this is what he's talking about here. When their daughter was found dead, in John's own words there, they had some reactions as to who might have been involved. So for all the talk about the great virtuous friends that he's got that are all on his side, and the minister and the family doctor and everything like that, somewhere he has some reactions as to who might have been involved. Now remember, this is John who's been talking about why it happened. This is the first time he's mentioned who. But what John is saying there is that the initial, so just after JonBenet was found dead, he had some initial reactions as to who might have been involved. Involved is interesting. It's not who might have done it, but it's who might have been involved. So that means more than one person. If people are involved in it, tends to mean more than one person. And he thinks that he certainly had some initial reactions as to who might have been involved. And then the rest of it just doesn't flow. I think what he's wanting to say is, we pointed the police to people we consider suspects, but we're still suspects. But hey, that's fine. That's how the police operate. They don't want to focus in too tight yet. We've got to look at everything. But he doesn't say it very well. He doesn't state it very well. I do not think he likes being considered a suspect at all. Another question is asked of them. The police said a couple of days ago to assure other residents of Boulder that there is no killer on the loose here. You can be assured everything is under control. You believe it's someone outside your home. Patsy says there is a killer on the loose, and John says absolutely. Patsy says, I don't know who it is. I don't know if it's a he or a she, but if I were a resident of Boulder, I would tell my friends to keep your babies close to you. There's someone out there. So when they're asked, you believe it's someone outside your home, you don't really go with this thing that there is no killer on the loose. Patsy says there is a killer on the loose, and John says absolutely. Well, I've spoken about absolutely already. It's just a bit too convincing sometimes for my liking. But look, this is factual. Whether it was one of those two that murdered JonBenet, whether it was a friend, whether it was just a random person from outside the home, this is factual of what they are saying. It's not really reassuring. It's just the truth. Patsy says, I don't know, twice. I don't know who it is. I don't know if it's a he or a she. Generally, as I've said, I don't know, I believe. It reassures me when someone says, I don't know. And I would be reassured there as well. I say would be reassured because she says, I don't know if it's a he or a she. Now, potentially this is just the sedation there, and she's kind of rambling a little bit, but interesting that she brought up those two divisions. She could have said, I don't know if it's a black person or a white person. She could have said, I don't know if it's a thin person or a fat person. I don't know if it's an old person or a young person. But she goes to, I don't know if it's a he or a she. Does she suspect a woman? Is that why she's brought he or she into it? Interesting choice of words. And then she says, if I were a resident of Boulder, I would tell my friends to keep your babies close. If I were a resident of Boulder. She was 5 days ago, but she really considers herself not to be a resident of Boulder now. Once more, we've got some avoidance of the question, and the question was about who is the person that did this. You believe it's somebody outside your house is what's put there, and they say there's a killer on the loose. I don't know who it is. I would tell my friends to keep your babies close to you, but you believe it's someone outside your home. Absolute tumbleweed to that answer. Why is that? The next question, inevitably, speculation on talk shows will focus on you. It's got to be sickening. John says, it's nauseating beyond belief. And Patsy says, you know, America has just been hurt so deeply with the tragic things that have happened. The young woman who drove her children into the water, and we don't know what happened with the O.J. Simpson. And I mean, America is suffering because we have lost faith in the American family. We are a Christian, God-fearing family. We love our children. We would do anything for our children. So once more, we've got this resume statement from Patsy. We are a Christian, God-fearing family. We love our children. We would do anything for our children. Again, she's invoking God there by talking about how Christian they are, how God-fearing they are. But I think this is potentially just the image management stuff coming up after this quite strange thing about the woman who drove her children into the water and the O.J. Simpson case. John deals with it more about it directly by saying the speculation is nauseating beyond belief. Beyond belief is convincing us, but nauseating is a very visceral word that's come up from him. So I'd be tempted to think that he does find it sickening that the focus is on them. In fact, we've seen that in all of his wording. He hates the fact that the focus is on them. He hates that so much he's trying everything in his power to say what great people they are, what virtuous people they are, and how many people believe in them and how many people are praying for them. The interviewer asks, do you truly think the perpetrator will be found? And John says, yes, he has to be found. He's asked, do you think it's a single individual? He says, yes. In my heart, I do. Why in his heart? Why not his head? What is going on with that answer there? I'm not entirely sure what it is, but it's a very interesting choice of words. Do you believe it's a single individual? Yes, in my heart, I do. And that is what I'm going to look at in the very first interview with John and Patsy Ramsey. So where am I at? What conclusions have I got? I see a lot of honesty in that. I do see a lot of honesty there, and I see a lot of image management, but I think that is kind of understandable in the most part. But I do see some red flags. That includes that image management where they're just trying too hard to say what a great family they are and what virtuous friends they have. It may be understandable that maybe that they have decided they want to control the narrative, but there's really no need for them to try so hard to convince us about what great people they are, what a great family they have. So that's a bit of a red flag for me. My other red flag is, who do they suspect? Because you'll notice when I pointed out those detours where they go off on one, that's very often when they're being asked about the identity of the killer. Do they suspect someone strongly? Or do they know a little bit more about what went on? Which is why when they're asked about who killed JonBenet, that's when they go to do I'm going to detour now and say what a great family I have. I'm going to detour now and talk about something else. I'm going to really avoid taking head on any questions about the identity of the kidnapper or any questions about the identity of the killer. So do they suspect someone? It's very early days. It seems to me they have a suspect or suspects in mind. Listen, the storytelling around the finding of the ransom note is really noticeable, especially when a lot of the time they've been quite sharp and direct with their answers. That story from Patsy around finding the note, not massively believable. John's story about his reaction to the note as well, not massively believable. My conclusion on that is I don't think they acted immediately. Whatever led to that, whether it was finding the note and they found the note much earlier and decided that they were going to go, what do we do here? Do we call the police? Do we call our friends? Do we do something else? Or whether it's more nefarious than that, I don't know from what is said there. But I do not think they found the ransom note on the stairs, ran up, saw JonBenet was gone and called the police immediately. They tried too hard to convince us that's what happened. They tried too hard to convince us the times of when those things happened. So I don't think they reacted immediately to finding out that JonBenet was gone. But I don't see them hiding any personal guilt. I do see them trying to avoid talking about who they think was responsible, but personal guilt, I don't see that in John and Patsy at all.
Do you understand why it is that so many people still think you are guilty?
I understand that they've been told that by the media for 3 long years. I'm amazed that the whole world doesn't think we're guilty based on what they've been told.
Welcome to Never a Truer Word, where we look at the words that people choose to use to see if they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If you're new here, what I do is different from anywhere else, because what I do is I strip away everything apart from the words said by the people at the center of the story. Then I use my process of statement investigation to give you the keys to see where deception could be happening, where the truth could be, and the motivations of the person talking as well. It's a process that I use with investigators, with corporate clients, and with the media to get a deep understanding of what is really being said. And this episode is live, so welcome along if you are taking this episode in live. The reason I do it live is so you can interact, so you can be involved. I love spending time with you looking at people's statements. So do say hello in the chat, give us your thoughts, give us your opinions, ask questions as well. I love you guys. I also love the replay crew. So if you are in that replay crew, then do say hello as well. Just even if you comment, replay crew, all helps the algorithm, but also anything of substance you have to say there as well would be fantastic. So we're going to look at John and Patsy Ramsey, the parents of JonBenet Ramsey. I should say the reason I wanted to do this was I was a guest on a podcast called the Tragedy Podcast recently, where we got talking about this case as a sort of sideline, and it awakened my interest in doing some more on John, Patsy Ramsey in the case of JonBenet Ramsey. I do recommend the Tragedy Podcast if you want to have something really interesting to listen to about cold, unsolved cases. Anyway, we're going back to 2000. And yes, this is what television looked like in 2000. If you're a young person, very fuzzy, very grainy, but this is what it looked like in 2000. We had to put up with it then. And it's John and Patsy Ramsey, as they say, it's 3 years after the murder of JonBenet. And they are talking to Barbara Walters. Man, she asks some tough questions, and she's going to ask some really tough questions. And we're going to analyze the answers they give to those tough questions as we go. I want to start off with a little clip from the beginning of the extract that I'm going to look at. It's just a very short one, but I'm playing it for a reason, which will become obvious as we look through some of the other clips.
Do you understand why it is that so many people still think you are guilty?
I understand that they've been told that by the media for 3 long years. I'm amazed that the whole world doesn't think we're guilty based on what they've been told.
So Barbara Walters asks them, do you understand why so many people still think you are guilty? And John says, I understand that they've been told that by the media for 3 long years. I'm amazed the whole world doesn't think we're guilty based on what they've been told. Now, I got very interested in this because, number one, it is something that we don't have enough here to say, oh, that means he's guilty or that means he's innocent because of the way he's talking. But why does he give this answer? I understand that they've been told that by the media for 3 long years. He hates the media almost as much as he hates law enforcement. So is this a chance for him to get out there and to have a go at the media, to set his stall out early and to say, you know, what the media are saying is absolute nonsense and that's why I'm doing this? Or is this a guy who is just taking on the question? Because the question is, and it's quite a brave thing to do, it's not trying to hide away from it at all. Do you understand why it is that so many people still think you're guilty? There's no deflection and saying our friends think we're innocent or anyone who really knows us thinks we're innocent. That doesn't really answer the question. He does take the question on and he says, yeah, I understand why people think we're guilty because of what they've been told by the media. So this is a really interesting answer for me. Like I say, it's too short for us to say, haha, that proves that John is guilty of the murder of his daughter, or anything like that. Too short as well to say this is an innocent man just answering the questions very straightforwardly. I think there's an agenda with them there, which is to have a go at the media, but what else is going on? The reason that I've raised that is for something that he will say later on in the interview. Right, let's have a look at the first big clip. Have a listen to John and Patsy talking here.
Through what the motives are. Motive number 1. You are guilty, Mr. Ramsey, because there was some evidence that your daughter had been sexually molested.
I know as best I can know as a father who was with his daughter every day that I was home. She was not sexually abused or molested before December 26th.
Okay, but on December 26th, there are some indications that your daughter was sexually molested.
Well,
Therefore, here's the motive. You were doing it. Maybe you'd done it before. Maybe you just did it that night. Perhaps your wife discovered you. Whatever it was, JonBenet cried out. You killed her.
Well, that's fits right in the category of it could have been done by an alien as well. It makes no sense. There's no history. A person doesn't go throughout their lives as a normal human being, one night turn into a monster, slaughter their daughter, go to bed, and get up and act normal from there on. That doesn't happen. In these kinds of cases, virtually all of them, I suspect, where there is child abuse in a family, there's a long history. And that's not the case in our family.
I have to point out that JonBenet's pediatrician, who had been her pediatrician from birth, has publicly said that he never saw any evidence of sexual molestation. There never have been reports from her school, and yet there is the suspicion.
I would have given my life for JonBenet in an instant, and was sorry that I couldn't have done it that night. To be accused of harming my child in any way is beyond comprehension.
Okay, loving the comments that we're seeing come in already there. So, and I think it's just a fascinating statement. So let's just have a look at it. Barbara Walters' first question. Man, she goes for it. So let me go through what the motives are. Motive number one, oh, by the way, body language people, rewind and look at how he reacts when Barbara says the next line. Motive number one, you are guilty, Mr. Ramsey. He does something when she says those words. Do let me know. Just rewind, have another watch of it. Let me know in the comments if you can. You are guilty, Mr. Ramsey, because there was some evidence that your daughter had been sexually molested. And his answer is I. And he thinks about it for a while. And he says, I know as best I can know as a father who was with his daughter every day that I was home, she was not sexually abused or molested before December 26th. So this is a real big one where he is qualifying the answer. He is not saying for a fact that JonBenet, nothing happened to her. There was no abuse of JonBenet. I'm going to tone the language down a little bit so we don't get into trouble with YouTube. But he is qualifying it there, and it's very qualified. I know, but as best as I can know, so that is not full-on proof, and that's not knowing everything. As a father, so that's someone close to the daughter, but I didn't experience everything because I was with my daughter every day that I was home, and he doesn't say how often that was. Was he not home a lot? And this could be two things, and a lot of what they say can go two ways for me, because this could be, I think that what he could be doing here is saying, this could have been happening when I wasn't there. Bad things could have been happening to JonBenet when I wasn't there, and I wouldn't have known. His mind is certainly open to that fact. As best I can as a father who was with his daughter every day that I was home, is open to the fact that things could have been happening when he wasn't at home. The other alternative is, this is just him being very honest, that he can't say for certain that this didn't happen. Because if he did say, I'm certain none of this was happening, I'd be accusing him of talking in absolutes, of, making statements that he can't back up. We can never be 100% certain of things like this. Therefore, I can take this one two different ways. She was not sexually abused or molested before December 26th. An acknowledgement there that this did happen. But again, it's this equivocation here, that he's talking in ways that are not absolutes, that he is really open to the fact that something bad could have happened to her. Barbara Walters continues, okay, but on December 26th, there are some indications your daughter Lee was sexually molested. Therefore, here's the motive. You were doing it. Maybe you'd done it before. Maybe you just did it that night. Perhaps your wife discovered you. Whatever it was, JonBenet cried out, you killed her. And he says, well, that's fits right into the category of it could have been done by an alien as well. It makes no sense. There is no history. Now, that is really, really awkward because, number one, he doesn't take on the question. He doesn't say, no, that didn't happen. He just says it might as well have been an alien. But that doesn't rule him out. If, could have been an alien, could have been John. They both fit is what he's saying there. What this is not, is it's not a denial. She's putting to him a very strong allegation, and he doesn't deny it outright. There is no denial there from the guy. He says it makes no sense. And I've highlighted it makes no sense because all the way through this interview, he talks about how it doesn't make any sense, as if he would all like it to make some sort of sense for him, or if you could put something to him sensible, then he would agree with it. But this doesn't make any sense. Now, he says it makes no sense. However, it does make sense. It's an allegation that makes more sense. It might be false, but his denial is not there. It's not, it didn't happen. It makes no sense. It kind of doesn't make sense if someone's doing that to a child anyway. But then he says, there is no history. And that is very straightforward. And maybe that is why to him it makes no sense, because there is no history. This could be him, again, being honest. And this is what I mean. I'm not sitting on the fence here with the Ramseys at all. I'll tell you what I think happened at the end of this episode based on this and based on other things I've seen. So I'm not sitting on the fence here and just going, oh, it could go this way, it could go that way. What I am doing is saying that the things he says could go both ways. But listen, worryingly, that's not a denial. He continues, a person doesn't go throughout their lives as a normal human being, one night turn into a monster, slaughter their daughter, and go to bed and get up and then act normal from there on. Now, that is interesting there, because what we've got going down here is a version of what happened. We don't know what happened to JonBenet. We really don't know what happened to JonBenet when she was murdered, what happened to her, the timelines or anything. But he seems to have a timeline there. It happened when he was in bed, or supposedly in bed, in terms of a story there. He seems to have that very fixed timeline there of what happened. And you'll see that he's not talking about himself. He talks about a third party. A person doesn't go through their lives as a normal human being, one night turn into a monster, slaughter their daughter, go to bed, get up and act normal from there on. So again, he's talking about a third person. So this is not a denial from him whatsoever. He's talking about this person. And then he says that doesn't happen in these kind of cases, virtually all of them, I suspect, where there's a child abuse in the family. There's a long history, and that is not the case in our family. Now, there again, we have his openness to the fact that this thing could happen. So again, look, if this guy was talking in absolutes and saying it never happens this way, there's no history, therefore I could not have done it, then I would have been saying this is a bit sus, because he's trying to shut this down totally. But no, he's open to the fact that what he's being accused of could have happened. He's not trying to shut it down by saying, no, this is not what happens. This is not what happens at all in life. He's open to the whole fact that this could have happened. He's not talking in absolutes. And again, I find that slightly reassuring. Other thing I find slightly reassuring is the use of the word slaughter to refer to his daughter. It's a very visceral term. It is a big, emotive, grisly term, not downplaying what happened to JonBenet at all. And as I say, quite often, criminals, bad people tend to downplay the words when they're talking. So they may have said, turn into a monster, do something, harm their daughter, go to bed and act normal from there on in. But he uses the word slaughter, which is a reassuring factor to me. Barbara continues to say, I have to point out that JonBenet's pediatrician, who has been her pediatrician from birth, has publicly said she never saw any evidence of abuse. There were never been any reports from her school, and yet there is this suspicion. And John says, I would have given my life for JonBenet in an instant, and I'm sorry that I couldn't have done it that night. To be accused of harming my child in any way is beyond comprehension. And this is where we have the downplaying of what happened. So it was slaughter earlier, but it is now harming my child in any way. There's this downplaying of what it is that people who think he's guilty is accusing him of harming my child. So I don't know if they even each other out, but there is a downplaying there in the words. And then he says, it is beyond comprehension. But can I just go back and play you what we heard from him at the very start?
Do you understand why it is that so many people still think you are guilty?
I understand that they've been told that by the media for 3 long years. I'm amazed that the whole world doesn't think we're guilty based on what they've been told.
So he says there, I comprehend it. It's due to the media. And yet at this point, to be accused of harming his child is beyond comprehension. And we've got a contradiction there. In the first thing that we heard him say, he understands why people think that because of the media narrative. He doesn't say the media have lied or made up bad things. He just says because of the media. But there he's saying it's beyond comprehension. Barbara says, this was a very brutal murder, and yet some of the authorities have said you staged this, that you loosely tied your daughter's hands, that you put the noose, the garrote, to make it look as if some terrible person had done this, that this whole picture was staged. And John says, well, that's absurd. This was done by a terrible person. The garrote was deeply embedded in JonBenet's throat. So we have, again, the real brutal terms, talking in real vivid terms about what happened to JonBenet, again, which is not being downplayed at all. And then we have a little bit of potentially a clue here. This was done by a terrible person, singular. So in his mind, whoever did it, whether this is knowledge or whether it's just his opinion, this was done by a terrible person, singular. He says, her hands were tightly bound. I couldn't get the knot untied. I tried to get it untied even before I brought her upstairs. The fundamental issue is no logic has been applied to any of this case. Now, this is where he starts talking in these absolutes. No logic has been applied to any of this case. Well, it has been. And what you've got going on here, dude, is that logic has been applied in this case. Logically, the killer of a child is very often someone in the same house as them, is very often a family member. That is logical thinking. But you're decided to talk in this absolute that no logic has been applied to any of this case at all. Why would I, for example, have staged this horrible scene, then disturbed it myself, pulled the tape off her mouth, carried her upstairs, tried to untie the hands before I brought her upstairs? If I'd have staged it, I would have wanted the police to see it as I staged it. It's not logical. It makes no sense. However, that's just his opinion. You know, it is logical in other ways. It doesn't really hold any water whatsoever there. So in that first extract, he directly answers questions that we've seen. He really does take the questions on. He listens to them and he deals with the content of the questions. Doesn't shy away from the horror of what happened to his daughter and talking about it that way. But there are no direct denials from him about the really, really big accusations that are put to him. And also there are those contradictions where it's beyond comprehension, but it also, he comprehends why people think that it's all down to the media. So let's have a look and see what is being said in that chat. So hey to Cindy. I've gone back and watched Patsy in some interviews and she appeared medicated to me. Yeah, she does in a lot of interviews. And this one less so, but I think, still very possible. Sheila says, as best as I can know, red flag number one. You and I differ on that one, Sheila. Now, normally we're the same team. I think as best I can know leans towards openness, that it could have happened, and that could be leakage, or it could be just him being very honest about what he does know, what he's certain of, and what he's not certain of. Cindy, again, the media can be relentless at times. Oh, yes, they can. Full-throated Motion, who is really into this case that we're saying in the chat earlier on. Every day that I was home, was he usually home or regularly not home? I think that is a really interesting question. I don't know your schedule if you're American. So, is this his way of saying anything could have happened when I'm not in that house? It could well be. Sheila, before that date, so only that date, there was something strange about him just mentioning that specific date and saying it as a date rather than the day it happened or something like that. I agree with you there. Not going to try and pronounce this username, but we have hi Jack, hi all, just came over to say hello and we'll watch later as I have 2 more patients before the day is done. Have a blast. go and look after your patients. Don't worry about us. And Pammy says, I used to feel 100% that John was guilty. Then later, Patsy. I've since changed my mind, especially after the DNA evidence on the twine didn't come back to either of them. Does that match with what I think, Pammy? We'll find out at the end of the analysis. Cindy, again, with something so horrific, I wouldn't know how to act, especially with cameras in my face all the time. And everyone watching your every move and reaction would make me lose my mind. Can't argue with that. Then we have Darkside saying, I believe they covered up her death. I don't believe there was an intruder. They talk about intruders later on in this analysis. And here we have Katin saying, or Cat in the desert. A murder does not require a history. Me or an alien. Gee, let me think. I agree. That was a really, really weak point by him. Full-throated motion. I'm Team Burke did it. Full-throated motion's opinions, not the opinions of this channel. And the parents covered it up. I haven't concluded whether Bert did it intentionally or accidentally, or if he actually remembers the event. Thanks for that, full-throated motion. Kat, again, DNA is unreliable because the scene was not secured as a crime scene and the residents and visitors were allowed to search the scene. Dad found her alone, ample opportunity to contaminate the scene. And Shaman Ray says, this was done by a terrible person. So this is something that John said in that extract there. Yet the ransom note was from a foreign group. I hadn't noticed that, Sharon Ray, but you're right. This was in the story that we know done by more than one person, this foreign faction. Yeah, this was done by a terrible person. They're going to talk more about the person they think they did it later on, so we'll see if we can get anything from that at all. Right, thank you for all your comments. Do keep them coming in. Let's listen to some more from the Ramseys.
Very brutal murder, and yet some of the authorities have said that you staged this, that you loosely tied your daughter's hands, that you put the noose, the garrote, to make it look as if some terrible person had done this, that this whole picture was staged.
Well, that's absurd. This was done by a terrible person. The garrote was deeply embedded in JonBenet's throat. Her hands were tightly bound. I couldn't get the knot untied. I tried to get it untied even before I brought her upstairs. The fundamental issue is no logic has been applied to any of this case. Why would I, for example, have staged this horrible scene and then disturbed it myself, pulled the tape off her mouth, carried her upstairs, tried to untie the hands before I brought her upstairs? If I'd have staged it, I would have wanted the police to see it as I staged it. It's not logical. Makes no sense.
And there we have a never a truer word. First, where I've done the analysis, and then we've listened to him talking about it. I don't have any way out of that other than to say I have spoken about that part already. So let's give us something new and fresh to listen to.
Let me give the motive that is ascribed to you, Mrs. Ramsey.
Okay.
Was bedwetting a source of tension in your house?
Absolutely not. All children have accidents.
The motive is that JonBenet wet her bed, and that you got angry, you lost it, you snapped, you killed her, perhaps accidentally. You were downstairs, maybe she came down, she said, Mommy, I wet my bed. You said, again, JonBenet, and you either pushed her or you hit her, you were exhausted, you were furious, you did it.
First of all, we know from the evidence that this was a premeditated murder. The way in which she died, the garrote that was around her neck,
you could have done it. You could have gotten nervous, and afterwards you could have done it. You could have awakened your husband and said, I did this terrible thing, John, and now we have to stage this. You know people have said this.
Of course they've said it.
But would you have a child, would you get up in the middle of the night and slaughter your child? We're parents. We love our children.
But
no.
What do you say when people say you just snapped? I mean, you know, whatever it was, something went wrong, you did this terrible thing, John then helped you, you staged this whole thing, you know.
It's nonsense.
Maybe you don't even know that she did it.
It's impossible. It's absurd.
I'm asking the questions you know.
I know.
People have said these are the two major motives. Either you sexually molested her or you snapped because primarily she was bedwetting.
Let me tell you something. I'm a cancer survivor of stage 4 cancer. John has lost a child in an automobile accident. That completely changes your outlook. When you are standing on the brink of death with a terminal illness, your priorities suddenly line up in a row, and you know exactly what the important things are in life. And bedwetting is totally insignificant. I love my children. I wouldn't harm them for anything in the world. Now, I don't know how you answer someone that continually accuses you of some absurd notion.
Right, lots to get stuck into there. So this is the motive being put now to Patsy Ramsey. Let me give the motive that is ascribed to you, Mrs. Ramsey. Was bedwetting a source of tension in your house? And Patsy says, absolutely not. All children have accidents. Now, this is very non-specific. This is about all children. All children have accidents. Yeah, they do. But frankly, do you care if anyone else's children have accidents? Do you care about all children? Or is it about the reaction to your own child's accidents? And we've got this persuasive word, absolutely not, which is not a no. Was bedwetting a source of tension in your house? It's a yes or no question, and she doesn't say yes or no. She gives absolutely, which some people use as a super no. Really persuasive. She really wants to persuade us that bedwetting wasn't a source of tension in the house. I think bedwetting was a source of tension in the house, and she gives this very non-specific answer. The motive is that JonBenet wet her bed and that you got angry, you lost it, you snapped, you killed her, perhaps accidentally. You were downstairs, maybe she came down. She said, Mommy, I wet the bed. You said, again, JonBenet. Apologies for the bad transcription of JonBenet, if you can see it on your screen there. And you either pushed her or you hit her. You were exhausted, you were furious, but you did it. And we have from Patsy. First of all, we know from the evidence that this was a premeditated murder. The way in which she died, the garrote that was around her neck, the tape, just like John, it's not a denial. It's a swerve. It's avoidance from what is being put to her, which is this very serious allegation. And just like John, she doesn't say no. She doesn't just say no, that's not what happened, or no, I didn't do that. It is, first of all, we know from the evidence that this was a premeditated murder. The way in which she died, the garrote that was around her neck, but she doesn't. Again, she talks about the garrote, or the garrote, as I would say. She doesn't shy away from talking about some of the more brutal aspects of it there. But she doesn't, again, just like John, she doesn't deny the allegation that's put to her. Barbara Walters continues. You could have done it. You could have gotten nervous, and afterwards you could have done it. You could have awakened your husband and said, I did this terrible thing, John, and now we have to stage this. You know people have said this. Of course people have said this, says Patsy. But would you, and this is John now stepping in, but would you have a child, would you get up in the middle of the night and slaughter your child? We're parents, we love our children. Now, this to me feels like turning the pressure around. When someone is asked a question and they answer with a question, I always say, be suspicious of that. Are they buying thinking time by asking a question, or are they diverting? Because what John's done here is make Barbara Walters the subject of the interview, not them, taking the heat off themselves and turning it on to Barbara Walters, avoiding talking about this bedwetting thing there. Would you have a child, would you get up in the middle of the night and slaughter your child? And they changed the story about what's happened here. Maybe that's because that's what the allegation has put. It was someone got up in the middle of the night to do it. But he talks about slaughter there. Barbara says to them, but what do you say when people say you just snapped? I mean, whatever it was, something went wrong. You did this terrible thing. John then helped you. You staged the whole thing. Maybe you don't even know that she did it. She says, it's impossible. I mean, it's absurd. And there's no denial from them again. It's just impossible. Not it didn't happen. It's impossible. It's absurd. Common theme for them is these allegations are silly. Rather than just batting them back and saying, no, they didn't happen, the common theme of these guys is these allegations are silly. Barbara continues, I'm asking the questions people have said that these are two major motives. Either you sexually abused her or you snapped because primarily she was bedwetting. And then Patsy goes into controlling language. She doesn't, once again, take on the question. She deviates away from the question and she takes control with a bit of controlling language. Let me tell you something. It's an order. It's a command. You let me tell you something. I'm a cancer survivor of stage 4 cancer. John has lost a child in an automobile accident. That completely changes your outlook. Now, this is like a resume statement or a resume statement where people say things that have happened in their life. I go to church every Sunday, so therefore I can't be guilty of murder. Or, I always donate to charity, therefore I couldn't have stolen that money. The two things don't go together, but the resume statement makes someone sound like a really good person, therefore they couldn't have done a bad thing. And that feels like what we're getting here. I'm a cancer survivor of stage 4 cancer. John has lost a child in an automobile accident. That completely changes your outlook. It changed us as people. It makes us different people. It completely changes your outlook, not my outlook. When you are standing on the brink of death with a terminal illness, your priorities suddenly line up in a row, and you know exactly what the important things in life are in life, and bedwetting is totally insignificant. I love my children. I wouldn't harm them for anything in the world. So wouldn't harm them for anything in the world is future focused. It's not, I didn't harm them. There is no specific denial from Patsy yet. It's impossible. I wouldn't do this in the future, but no specific denial of all of that. Now, I don't know how to answer someone that continually accuses you of some absurd notion, and we have that absurd coming up again. So here, no direct denial from Patsy. These resume statements about how they've suffered tragedy and adversity in their life, the thought is not squared there of, therefore we couldn't have done this. It's just these resume statements. However, there is big deflection. John going, you've got children, would you do this? Rather than taking on the allegations that are put to them. And Patsy doing that, taking control. Let me tell you something, and doing the resume statement. Big deflection from the guys there. Right, let's have a look and see what you guys are saying in the chat. Lots of theories, which I'm more than interested in looking at, but not my sort of area of expertise. I don't mind sharing them. Blue Eyes, hello. Thank you for the great content. Oh, thank you for that. Welcome. And to everybody here, regards from Norway. I want to go to Scandinavia. That is one of my big ambitions. Blue Eyes, hello to you too. Skeeter Girl, one of the culprits is dead. The other gets occasional softball interviews on various networks. He does get an easy time of it, doesn't he? Nearly, I don't think he did it since he has been fighting for the DNA testing found in his clothing. Thank you for that. Pammy, that's just incredibly sad to even think about the girl even still. Afton, none of the investigators agreed with each other about what happened. So strange. I didn't know that. I thought they were maybe more grouped than that, Afton. So thank you for that. Dons says, John is a master liar. Someone in that house did it. Well, we're going to talk about who could have done it in John's mind a little bit later. Barbara Walters was awesome. Miss her, says Retro Unleashed. Now, we don't have Barbara Walters in the UK, but yeah, she looked pretty damn awesome to me. Cindy is so horrible after all these years. Dark Side, they are protecting Burke, I believe. Protecting certainly comes into my thoughts as well. Pammy, I have thought Burke too, but wasn't he ruled out? I may have forgotten the details. And we have Retro. Retro. This was the first true crime case I remember from being a child. My mom thinks parents done it. She passed in '98. Crazy. It is still not solved. It is just crazy. Full-throated motion. They're giving a lot of reasons why they couldn't have done it that aren't real reasons as to why they couldn't have done it. Agree with you there. It is this, let's call them resume statements. It's, here's the thing, therefore we couldn't have done it. But the thing doesn't stand up to any kind of scrutiny. And often, I don't know how rational I could be about my child dying this way and then being accused. Retro deflection is all it is. And Sharon Ray, having lost children previously, they may be more adept at handling the situation. I know exactly what you're getting at there. So thank you very much for your comment. Right, let's get some more from the Ramseys here.
Did either of you for a moment suspect each other?
No,
Not for
absolutely
a
not for a
minute.
microsecond.
Tom Haney, who was the detective, homicide detective from Denver, asked me that very question in my 3-day interrogation. After 3 days of listening to him hammer me, I said, don't even go there. If I thought for one moment that JonBenet Ramsey was murdered by her father, we wouldn't be having this interview right now.
Did you spot what I spotted in that? Let's have a look. Did either of you for a moment suspect each other? Asked Barbara. And we have no, not for a minute, and then absolutely not for a microsecond. Now, those are two very different answers, both about time, but very, very different. Shall we have just another listen to that part?
Did either of you for a moment suspect each other?
No.
Not for
Absolutely
a
not for a
minute.
microsecond.
Absolutely not for a microsecond is not answering the question with a yes or no. It's a yes/no question, and that seems to be what comes from John. Absolutely not for a microsecond. Absolutely not. It's convincing. And no, not for a minute, says Patsy. Two different things. Patsy does give a no, but John gives an absolutely. Then we get, again, kind of resume statement from Patsy. Tom Haney, who is the detective, the homicide detective from Denver, asked me that very question in my 3-day interrogation. After 3 days of listening to him hammer me, I said, don't even go there. If I thought for one moment that JonBenet Ramsey was murdered by her father, we wouldn't be having this interview right now. Interesting use of the full name there. Now, someone mentioned that she does seem to be medicated in interviews, and I thought there was some slurring going on in the words there, that maybe, again, she was on some sort of medication, and maybe that's why she used the full name. It's just, she's not, I don't want to say not 100% there, but it's the phrase that came to the top of my mind. But it is very interesting that she talks about her daughter with the full name, almost as if she's someone apart from it. You know, I would talk about JonBenet Ramsey. I wouldn't expect her to talk about JonBenet Ramsey. She does use the word murdered, though, which again is not downplaying what happened to her. Did Patsy suspect John? Is that what we're getting at there? Or did John suspect Patsy? I think, don't know. John, to me, seems to be a little bit more open to those ideas than Patsy was there. Let's see what you guys have been saying to that one. We have Ashy. Hi, Ashy. If it was an accident and Burke is being protected, I can understand how they got here. How far would you go to protect your remaining child? Protection. I'll keep going to that, Ashy. There is protection happening, I believe. Microsecond, we have from Sheila. Yeah, she spotted it. They didn't suspect each other for even a microsecond is wildly sus, says Full-Throated Motion. Crocheting Bat says the use of her full name feels weird. It doesn't just feel weird, it is weird for the mother to use the full name of her daughter. Milky Way Girl, full name makes it sound weird. It's typically something parents say when they're mad or upset. Yeah, that's a good point. That's when my parents would use my full name as well. And Pammy, well, hell, I'd have needed all kinds of drugs at that point, LOL. I'm not judging her for being like that whatsoever. Oh, right, more to come from the Ramseys. Trust me, we will go back to them. If you are interested in the Ramseys, and I see some people mentioning it in the chat, I do have a playlist on YouTube. We're looking at the JonBenet Ramsey situation. I look at a couple of the interviews, one recent one with John, and another one that was done nearer the time with John and Patsy Ramsey. Also, the ransom note, I've had a look at and break that down, and also the 911 call as well, because there are so many words and statements involved in this story. So if you want to take in any of them, that's all there. If you're enjoying this, if you come across this and you're like, oh, wow, this is my take on things, we do this a lot. So if you subscribe to this channel, you can join lives like this. You will know when they're happening, and you'll get regular episodes, at least one a week as well, if you subscribe. And if you do appreciate what's going on here, press the like button, share this with someone that's interested in it as well, or leave a comment with a question, an observation, an opinion. It all helps get out to more people. And always say my aim ain't just to sit and look at this intriguing, and it is a very intriguing true crime case. My aim is also to give people the ability to see a little bit deeper into what is being said by people all around them. So liking, subscribing, commenting, sharing helps that get to even more people. If you do all those things, I'm so grateful. Right, let's listen to a couple more bits from the Ramseys.
The note was written on a pad and a pen from your home. And the question is, if the intruder was planning to write a note, why wouldn't he or she have brought their own pad and paper?
They knew that the less they brought in the house, the better.
But they planned to write a note?
Apparently.
Before or after the crime?
I think the note was written before the crime was committed.
What has thrown great suspicion on you, Mrs. Ramsey, as you know, is that some handwriting experts have said that there's a similarity between the writing on this note and your handwriting. This has been inconclusive, but the similarity of the handwriting is the strongest piece of evidence implicating you.
Well, if that's the strongest, then there's not much of a case, because we have had handwriting experts to look at my handwriting as well. And on a scale, I believe, of 1 to 5, with 5 being a totally incomplete match, I was rated at a 4.5. So there's very little.
Right. Talking about the old ransom note there then. So that part there starts off with Barbara saying, the ransom note was written on a pad and a pen from your home. And the question is, if the intruder was planning to write a note, why wouldn't he or she have brought their own pad and paper? And they say they knew that the less they brought in the house, the better. So this is them talking from inside the mind of the person that did it. They knew that the less they brought in the house, the better. It really does feel like they are inside the mind of, sorry, not the killer, but inside the mind of the person that wrote the ransom note. That's there. They call them they as well. Now, they's a funny word. They can refer to one person, but they can also refer to more than one person. And they refer to the ransom note writer as they. But remember, the person who killed their daughter was a person when John was talking earlier. Interesting changes in pronouns and so on. We have they knew the less they brought in the house, the better. They knew that. Barbara says, but they planned to write a note, apparently, before or after the crime. I think the note was written before the crime was committed. So I think, so I'm not sure, there's some doubt there, the crime was committed. Now, they're really certain, really certain about some things. They knew the less they brought in the house, the better. They know that. But I think the note was written before the crime was committed is interestingly vague. What has thrown great suspicion on you, Mrs. Ramsey, as you know, is that some handwriting experts have said there's a similarity between the writing on the note and your handwriting. This has been inconclusive, but the similarity of handwriting is the strongest piece of evidence impacting you. Well, if that's the strongest, says Patsy, then there's not much of a case. Because we have handwriting experts we've had handwriting experts to look at my handwriting as well. And on a scale, I believe, of 1 to 5, with a 5 being totally incomplete match, I was rated a 4.5. So there's very little. Now, she doesn't finish the whole thought off there, but again, to be fair, then we have her not saying this totality of, no, our handwriting expert said it couldn't have been me, just it was impossible for it to be me. She actually leaves that 0.5 where it could be her, which is interesting. Once more, just not shutting the whole thing down there in that part there. From saying things don't make sense and there's no logic. You remember earlier on, why would they do that? That just, this whole thing doesn't make sense. This crime doesn't make sense. All of a sudden, they seem to be inside the mind of the ransom note writer. So, they knew the less they'd bring, the better. And it was done before the crime. They seem to be going from these things don't make any sense is what happened to our daughter to the ransom note makes a little bit of sense. That's the biggest thing that I got there. What are you guys saying to it? Well, Retro says, I never thought of that, but when someone says my first name and surname, yeah, they're mad at you. When you get that, that's what happens. Sure. Dawn, I really like this show. Thanks to the new outlooks. New outlooks is what I want to do. So thank you very much for that. That's made my episode. The first word is absolutely. The devil is in the details. That's a comment about when we had the absolutely didn't suspect them for a microsecond part earlier. Afton, maybe there was some suspicion and now they feel guilty about it. Yeah, that's a really good thought, Ashton. It could have been that. And I guess naturally that would come as well. Shaman Ray, when Homicide interviewed me 34 months later, yes, she didn't mention the gap between the crime and the consenting to an interview. She also called it an interrogation rather than an interview, you might have noticed. So we're thinking on behalf of the terrorist faction now, are we, John? Grow a brain, John. Yeah, thought the same thing. Loads of people said this. I haven't actually noticed this. She started that answer with, well, storytelling. Let's just go back and see what was. Yes, Barbara. The similarity of the strong handwriting is the strongest piece of evidence implicating you. Everyone spotted the well, apart from the guy that looks at words. Me. Well, if that's the strongest, then there's not much of a case. So what that is an indication of is that she's not going to deal with the question directly. She is going to go on a little bit of storytelling, a little bit of an explanation as she talks. And that well at the beginning of the answer signifies that. Why wouldn't they just bring the note with them, says Carol. I mean, this is, lots of things they say with concrete certainty, but they don't hold up to scrutiny. They can be questioned, just like you say there. Pammy, how would whoever wrote the note know that where the papers and pens were? Oh, I think we'll come to that, Pammy. Don't worry. They're going to talk about that. Full-throated motion. Their certainty about aspects they should definitely not be certain of if they weren't involved stands out in so many interviews. I agree with you. That's what I saw there. Cindy, the note was thought out in detail. That would take time. So who, what, when, where? All a good time. We've got one more piece of Ramsey's to look at, and it deals with all of this. Retro, inside the mind, I agree. Retro also says, oh my gosh, that's so creepy. I just got goose flesh ick. Ugh. Thank you for the comments. Keep them coming as we watch this last bit of John and Patsy Ramsey.
When Benet's body was found, there was one of her favorite nightgowns next to her so-called Barbie nightgown. And so there was the impression that whoever did this cared about this child, left the nightgown, left the blanket. Again, her parents did it, but they loved her, so they tried to comfort her even in death.
That's a very strange, that nightgown should not have been there. It's a clue of some type, we don't know what. Look, we know several very positive facts about this killer, we believe. It's a male. It's a pedophile that looks at young female children much differently than you and I do. They look at them with sexual eyes. I've thought about it every day for 3 years. I've talked to experts. I've talked to experienced homicide detectives. It's the best profile we can come up with.
So in that part there, they are talking about, excuse me, the stuff that was left behind. And I'm sorry, I've lost a bit of the actual audio. We're going to have to put this right somehow. So when JonBenet's body was found, there was one of her favorite nightgowns next to her so-called Barbie nightgown. And so there was the impression that whoever did this cared about his child, left the nightgown, left the blanket. Again, her parents did it, but they loved her, so they tried to comfort her even in death. And John says, that is very strange. That nightgown should not have been there. It's a clue of some type. I mean, that nightgown should not have been there. That is not what I would expect to hear from someone who does not know. JonBenet should not have been there. Never mind the nightgown. What does that mean? That nightgown should not have been there. I don't know. It's a clue of some type. We don't know what. Look, we know several very positive facts about this killer, we believe. Okay, so several is what he's going to say. And positive facts. Positive about a killer? Several things for sure, I think would be the more expected way of saying that. But he says positive facts about the killer. It's a male, he says. And again, this has gone from this, it doesn't make sense, it's absurd, it doesn't make sense, to it makes sense because what he says here makes sense. It's a male, a pedophile. That all does make sense. It's gruesome, it's grotesque, but it does add up. It is a pedophile that looks at female children very much differently than you and I do. Now, I quite like the fact that he sets himself apart from it. We believe they look at them with sexual eyes. I've thought about it every day for 3 years. I've talked to experts. I've talked to experienced homicide detectives. It's the best profile we can come up with. There's that several very positive facts about the killer. I mean, that is pretty much obvious from what happened, but he thinks this is some bombshell sort of evidence that we've got there. In that part there is no real insight to the killer that's got there. The nightgown shouldn't have been there, but JonBenet should. Is that the implication we're supposed to get from that? But John does seem to set himself apart from the killer again by saying this person is different from you and I. Let's see what you guys have been saying about that part. Sheila, that's very strange. He doesn't finish that. No, he doesn't finish that thought at all. He knows. How does he know? I agree with that. Afton, anyone who cares about her wouldn't have left her how she was found. good point. Dark Side, hang on a minute. Didn't he just say she could not have been abused? And now he's talking about that, yeah, he is full of it. I know exactly what you're saying there. Now, I've lost the clip that goes with the bit I've been talking about, which is the person inside the house. So let's just look at the words, if you will bear with me for that one. Man, it's been, it's been bad stuff tonight, isn't it, in terms of the old technicals? One of the questions is, what reason for there to be would a kidnapper have for leaving behind both the ransom letter and the body? John's reply to that was, I hope to ask the killer that someday face to face. We believe that this was a kidnapping originally that went bad. Now this person, this creature, his mind doesn't work like ours. So we have John talking here and saying that he does hope to ask the killer that face to face one day. So he does have some thought that he may come across the killer. Then it's, we believe this was a kidnapping originally that went bad. Now, there is lots of certainties that they talk and lots of uncertainties when they talk, lots of vagueness. And this is just a we believe. We believe this was a kidnapping originally that went bad. Now, this person, this creature, his mind doesn't work like ours. So this creature is again not downplaying the vile nature of what happened there by calling the person a creature, setting himself apart from it, really. His mind doesn't work like ours. So this is again him saying that he thinks this is one person that did this, and it's male. It's a boiling. So whatever was going through this creature's mind, we can't logically analyze and explain. Man, he would love it to be logical, wouldn't he? Barbara says, another indicator of your possible guilt to the police and the FBI is time. It's said that only you two had the time and opportunity to commit the murder. Use the noose, this girl wrote, carry the child downstairs, write a 2.5-page ransom note without the fear of being detected. If it were an intruder, this intruder would be afraid that you would wake up, that Burke would wake up. And yet all this takes time. This takes time. And then we have, we believe the killer came into our home while we were gone, waited, and was there when we returned. Waited hours? Asked Barbara Walters. Waited hours. Had plenty of time to write an ransom note. Not plenty of time to do the killing, just plenty of time to write a ransom note. It's the thing that they are focused on, plenty of time to write a ransom note. When you were asleep? Asked Barbara Walters. When we were asleep, or perhaps before we even came home. Patsy says, we would have been gone for 3 to 4 hours. That is plenty, ample time to find their way and learn their way around the house. So, Patsy, we would have been gone for 3 to 4 hours. Not we were gone for 3 to 4 hours, but we would have been gone for 3 to 4 hours. Might just be her way of talking, might be just, something that she said just once, but it's not a definite. We were away for 3 to 4 hours. It's we would have been gone for 3 to 4 hours. And then she talks about they find their way and learn their way around the house. Then we have Barbara saying to them, and be in the house when you return? Yes, says Patsy. Does it sound possible that a killer would sit for hours and hours in your house? And Patsy says, that house was so rambling. There were so many hiding places. He could be hidden for a week and we wouldn't find him. So we have him now, one person hiding. He could be hidden for a week and we wouldn't find him. What I wanted to know when I saw that answer was, how would the person know that about the house unless they had knowledge of the house? Could they see from outside the house that, oh, this has got plenty of hiding places. I'll be good to hide for, a week in here. Or is this her saying that the person that did it must have had knowledge of the house? So in that part, I'm sorry we didn't hear them talking. But again, they do seem to be inside the mind of the person. They seem to be able to think like the person that did it. And I also think they have some idea of who was responsible. Right, before I do my conclusions, let's see what you guys have to say. And we have PM, this killer versus they knew. Is it one culprit or more than one? Well, everything they say, because when they use there and they could just be talking about one person. But what I noticed was, in pattern terms, the ransom notes put down to they more often, and the killer is one person and normally a he. Interesting way of thinking about it. Simi says, it shouldn't have been there. This is going back to the Barbie nightgown. So whoever was covering up for whomever did it forgot to grab the nightgown. Could be Simi. Simi also says they keep waffling back and forth from one perp to multiple perps. I've covered that. I think, we may be talking about multiple people involved in this. Sure. Involved in this whole thing. Sheila says, we would have been gone. That's weird. Yeah, it was weird. We would have been gone for hours. A trusted friend would also be comfortable in their house, and I can understand why they wouldn't want to entertain that idea. I agree with you. Dark Side of the Moon, they keep making excuses, says Dark Side of the Moon. So look, keep your chats coming in. Let me know what you think, having looked at all the words in that interview. What do I think? Well, look, I've done the 911 call. I've looked at the ransom note. I've looked at their interviews as well. And this is something new that I've looked at, but it doesn't really change what I think happened, which is my opinion based on looking at their words and studying how these guys have acted and called the police and the words in the ransom note, which is that I don't think they were responsible for the killing of their child. But I do think they were responsible for covering up who did it. I believe they knew who did it, not necessarily their son. I've seen nothing in their words that point to that, but I couldn't rule that one out as well. But I believe they knew who did it, why it happened, even if it was accidental. And for some reason, they couldn't tell that story. Maybe they just thought it was a better thing to do at first and just got under the sheer weight of it at the time. But my belief is that they weren't directly involved in the killing, but very much involved in the cover-up. What do you think? We have Darkside saying, same, Jack, 100%, love it. We also have Ashy saying 100 as well. I'm presuming you agree with me. I'm being the kind of person I am. I'm going to think that you agree with me because I love when people agree with me. Sheila says, I agree. And we also have Simi saying, I agree there. Full-throated motion, I'm only slightly more certain than Jack about the whodunit, but otherwise agree. So, wow. Is this a world first where there is a podcast looking at true crime and everyone agrees? Let's see what else we have. I was 16 when this happened in my city. My dad believed they were guilty until the day he passed. He didn't want us to watch too much of the news surrounding it. I don't know. Not quite disagree, but also respect your dad's opinion as well there. We have Cat in the Desert saying absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Are we going to have that? Are we going to have? Are we going to allow Cat in the Desert to get away with an absolutely agree, or should we banish her from the chat? We have the power. Shaman Ray, I think it was the boy. Simi, if I didn't agree, I'd say so. I'd be nice about it though. Of course you would be, Simi, because you're a nice person. Full-throated says, I feel like I have to change my opinion to be contrarian. Story of my life as well, Full-throated. I like doing that. And Kat is now getting it for using the word absolutely. Oh, Afton, thank you for this. I think you may have mentioned this earlier. The last John Douglas book I read mentions this case, talks about his conversations with the Ramseys and the investigators. I think I have I read that one as well? I'm not entirely sure whether I've read that one, but it's maybe something I will check out. Carol says it was a family affair, 100%. Chaucer, makes sense to me. The garrote was what convinced me they didn't kill her, but the rest seems a little fishy. I believe they covered up for someone else in the house, either their son or someone else that wasn't accounted for in the house that night. Listen, I had a really, really interesting conversation with an investigator who's been looking into this story and the whole area where this happened for a long time, who has a theory that it was not the son, but yes, someone else in the area. And yeah, some of the stuff I learned from that was, whoa, mind-blowing. Pammy, the close family friend who played Santa is who I sent her on. I wouldn't say that's a bad thing to do at all, from what I heard. How does the speaker's preparedness potential rehearsal matter in this kind of analysis? Great question. Really one for the question and answers edition, which comes out monthly, but I'll deal with that one now, and then we shall go crocheting. So, yes, lots of things will affect the way they speak. So, for example, the more they tell a story, the more practiced they will become at it, the more polished they will become at it, which means that if someone is lying, the first time they tell the lie, it's going to be really rough and spiky and have all sorts of edges on it. And then they're going to like sandpaper them off as they tell it over time because they get used to telling it. Could even be the fact that because they've repeated it so much, that it's a little bit more real to them. They almost like believe it and are able to talk about it a little bit more in real terms. Rehearsal will really help. However, I did a misspeak tonight where I was talking away with a sentence, but I caught the word sure out of my eye in a comment or something like that. And I said sure, completely inappropriate to what I was talking about on this episode. But what I'm saying there is that it's really hard to keep what you're thinking out of what you're saying, because most of the time our words are just coming out without any filter. Our brain is picking really good words for us to say that match our experience and whatever, and these things will come out. So I hope that answers your question, Crocheting. It does affect it, but not to the point where there's no artifacts there to suggest whether something is truthful or deceptive there. Right. Thank you very much for that and all your comments. That has been an hour looking at Ramsey's, and I'm sure I will do some more of them sometime soon. But we will see you soon for something new from Never a Truer Word.